sir?
Okay, we will call to order the Oak Island Town Council regular meeting of August 20th, 2013. The council will enter into its invocation by Council Member Jim Medlin, and then we will have our Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you stand with us, please? Heavenly Father, it's indeed a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to serve the people in our town. It's a privilege to serve you. And we thank you for those privileges. We ask your blessings on this meeting tonight, and may all that we do here be in accordance with your will, and may we glorify you. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Medlin. We had on our schedule a public hearing to begin at 6 p.m., but our attorney is late. There was an accident on the bridge. He is on the way. So I'm going to scramble the agenda a little bit. We're going to go straight to presentations, proclamations, and recognitions, so I can do one proclamation before we have our council reports and wait until our attorney gets here. If the Southport Oak Island AA All-Star baseball team would come right up front here, please. Come stand right over here in this bend of this so we can get you on camera as I read this proclamation. That's the best looking thing I've seen in a long time. Yeah. And I'm going to read this entire proclamation. Whereas Little League Baseball is a time-honored tradition in the Oak Island community, offering our children an opportunity to learn about the importance of hard work, teamwork, and sportsmanship. And whereas in July, the Southport Oak Island AA All-Star baseball team represented the community and the state of North Carolina in the AA Coach Pitch World Series in Rockwood, Tennessee. And whereas to make it to Rockwood, the Southport Oak Island AA All-Star baseball team, made up of 12 8-year-olds from 4 baseball teams, won the district tournament in Charlotte and the state tournament in Hope Mills, North Carolina. In 11 tournament games, the team outscored opponents 157-28. Ooh. And whereas the players and coaches have created a positive image for their peers and the citizens of the town of Oak Island and surrounding areas. And whereas the team won only its first game in Tennessee, pretty good, and coaches Jason Disbrow, Clay Jenkins, Eric Bocock, and Cliff Pender can be very proud of their team, which earned sportsmanship awards in Charlotte and Rockwood. And whereas the town of Oak Island extends its appreciation to the coaches for teaching more than just the rules of the game and a desire to win, and congratulates the Southport Oak Island AA All-Star baseball team on a job well done. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the town of Oak Island officially acknowledges the talents, skills, teamwork, sportsmanship, and successes of the Southport Oak Island AA All-Star baseball team, and on behalf of our citizens, does hereby extend this expression of our pride in this prestigious milestone achieved by players Shelton Bocock, Jordan Daniels, Fred Disbrow, Eli Hedblom, Christian Hagblom, Preston Smith, Walker Jenkins, Jaden Marvin, Theodore Wood, Dow Pender, Will Lammerman, and Sean Wagner. Proclaimed this the 20th day of August, 2013, and years ago that the sportsmanship award is coveted even more than winning the games. And our Dixie Youth teams always win that sportsmanship award. So you go, guys. There is a signed copy of the proclamation. Okay. And I almost would like to see if our town clerk couldn't get the age range of those attending our meeting this evening. Next up, let's see. My agenda's getting all turned upside down. I think we will go straight into general comments.
But you still have one.
Pardon? Well, we had the presentation. Yeah, okay. But isn't the presentations and proclamations after the public comment, council reports?
Here he comes.
There he is. Yay. The mayor can get unconfused now. Okay. We just had time, Brian, to do the proclamation for a wonderful baseball team. You missed seeing them all in their
I
uniforms.
think I saw them as they were leaving.
Yeah. Okay, we will call for the public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing is to receive citizens' comments on an application for a conditional use permit for a day dock facility at the preserve. Mr. Eads, we waited on you because I believe you had some information and possibly some advice for us.
Yes, Madam Mayor. It's been brought to my attention that since this application has been submitted, there has been a question about the ownership of either the subject property or the property that will, for lack of a better word, facilitate what they would like to do. I would suggest that we continue this hearing and have staff investigate the dispute. And if the applicant and anyone in opposition is here, that is not to say that the town will decide the ownership issue. But once we see that there's a legitimate dispute, staff and myself will come back to the board and advise what we think at that point. But we will not be making a final decision on the ownership issue. And my recommendation will be, if it is a legitimate dispute, that we either, one, do not consider the application until such time as a court of competent jurisdiction adjudicates that dispute and tells us who owns what, or two, the parties are in agreement and there's not an issue anymore, or three, lastly, and probably the least advisable option, would be to any approval, condition the approval on the permit not being active, if you will, until such time as that dispute is resolved. CAMA does that often when there's issues on CAMA permit applications. But at this point, my recommendation would be to continue this hearing until such time as we can look at the dispute and then go from there.
Madam Mayor,
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue this public hearing until such time as the ownership issues on this property are settled, and it can come back to us then.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Weinkauf.
Question.
Please.
For purposes of advertising and that sort of thing, I know you can continue without re-advertising, but that's generally continued to a particular date.
Right. You're absolutely right. In order to not have to advertise, you have to set the next date. We can set it for next month. I don't know. I understand that the applicant and the person in opposition might be in discussions. They may have that resolved tonight, tomorrow, next week. But if they don't have it resolved by the 30th, I'll be saying the same thing to the board I'm saying right now. So if you want to avoid having to advertise, then you would need to set it for a date certain, which can be at the board's.
Well, and we always have conditional use permit public hearings of this nature at our regular meetings. So I was just going to suggest that we might want to amend that motion to continue the public hearing to our September regular meeting, which is the 9th of September.
10th.
You'd have to do that in order, otherwise you're going to have to re-advertise. I mean,
Well, if we
Councilman.
do it till the 10th of September, that's not anywhere near 30 days.
Do we have to set it, can we cancel the public hearing rather than continue?
Well,
Postpone it, could we not?
you can postpone it, but Councilmember Royal's question is, do we have to re-advertise? And the answer to that question is no if you set the next date.
Understand.
But if you don't set the next date, then you're going to have to re-advertise.
That's,
Okay, let me just change the wording of my motion. I would move that we would postpone the public hearing until a later date that would coincide with this issue being settled, and at that time, we'll re-advertise and set up another public hearing.
you amend the second the amended motion? Okay, we have an amended motion and a second on the amended motion. All those in favor, please. All those opposed? Motion carries 4-1 with Council Royal dissenting.
Madam Mayor, if I
Please.
just may reiterate to those interested parties in the audience, the town will not be the judge and jury on this issue.
Correct.
We will defer that to a court that's competent for that. So I just wanted, to the extent that anyone has the notion that we're going to decide that, we're not.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam
Okay.
Mayor, my
Please.
understanding is that you just voted to amend the motion. Do you now need to have a vote on the amended motion?
Do I have, we have the amended motion. All those in favor of the amended motion, please. All those opposed. Carries 4-1 with Council Royal dissenting. And thank you, Madam Clerk, for always keeping us straight. Okay.
There was one other
Please.
question
Yeah.
Councilmember Royal had posed to me about the planning board date versus the application date. Is that something we need to address?
A couple things, procedural issues, just as this is procedural. The difference between the application date that's in our packet and the day of the planning board meeting preceded that.
Right.
That was one procedural thing. I know there was a different application that planning board looked at, whether that's material or not. And the other part of this, if the property, if all the other issues are resolved to move forward with this, then this would actually be, needs to also, there needs to be some procedure. I know we've done amended conditional use permit applications, but I don't think we've, for other types of facilities, but not for PUDs. This would need to be an amendment of the original PUD in order to be included in future maintenance and homeowners association documents. And so my question to you was, how do we go about doing that?
I've already started looking at that, and what I would suggest is that as we address the ownership dispute, that staff comes up with an answer on those issues as well. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next is public comment period. Let me pull out, and Madam Clerk, I'll give you the list of those that signed up for the public hearing. General comments. We have first signed up Larry Parker. And reiterate our rules, you can speak for 3 minutes. If you need an additional minute, you may be allowed an additional 2 minutes. Please state your name and address when you come to the podium to speak.
Larry Parker, 604 East Beach. I live on the beach and walk 2 miles a day. We all readily admit that tourism is the financial lifeblood of our town, and yet we seldom act like it, unfortunately. We're all painfully aware of the horrible bumps that exist after the failed sewer project. There are 4 to 6 inch dips on Dolphin Street that are so bad I can't even drive on it anymore because it wrenches my bad back. It used to be the key alternative for locals and savvy tourists during the tourist season to avoid Beach Street. It was also a playground for families where kids could safely ride their skateboards and their scooters and their trikes and really enjoy it in a spirit of safety. Most of that has moved off of Dolphin because the traffic is way down, and the people are now using Beach Street. Unfortunately, the new bridge has more than doubled the traffic on Beach Street from feeding into Middleton in both directions. And you might be saying, well, you know, we've got this nice 3-foot wide access lane on both sides of Beach Street for bikes and, you know, kids and walking and all that sort of thing. Not. If you've been down to look, every street end is filled all the way to the car path with rocks, mud, and gravel. We clean it once a year when the Wounded Warriors are coming with the cameras. It's an accident waiting to happen. My wife and I have had a couple of harrowing experiences recently when we were driving down Beach Street at night, and all of a sudden a kid on a skateboard jumps out in front of the car to avoid rocks on the side. And a bike is using the street because it's too dangerous to ride on a cart path, or the path. So I strongly, strongly recommend that maybe before Labor Day we could clean Beach Street, and maybe by next year, instead of making a priority of block-long streets that have 10 or 12 cars a day, that we could maybe make Dolphin a high priority for paving because of its importance to tourism and access and egress to the island and taking traffic off of Beach Street. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. And Mr. Foster, I'm sure you'll be glad to look into that.
I'm making notes, Mayor.
Okay. Next is Richard Bunce.
Richard Bunce, 125 Northeast 26th Street. The 15-year cable franchise agreement that the town of Oak Island, town of Long Beach originally, has with Time Warner Cable expires next month. It has been the case since 2007 that any cable service provider, including television, internet, and internet phone service, has been able to enter this market and compete with Time Warner Cable, and going forward, should Time Warner Cable choose to stay on the island after next month. The state now monitors the cable service franchises, and anyone can file with the state to provide services to all or portions of the town. As residents and property owners, we would all benefit from contacting the well-known regional cable service providers such as AT&T and Charter, as well as new providers such as Clear, which is wireless and would not have the same startup costs as a wired service. Encourage these providers to come down and survey the market and consider even offering niche services to begin with, such as internet and phone service tailored to the beach strand rental property owners, where a basic service is offered to the owner and then weekly renters could purchase additional services for their stay. Once the providers have established a service foothold on the island and an income stream, then perhaps they will expand to other segments of the market. The cable service delivery technology changes rapidly from year to year, and the content providers are on the edge of sweeping changes that would benefit island residents sooner rather than later if they can take advantage of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bunce. Next is Sylvia Beck.
Sylvia Beck, 4836 Coastal Drive. The farmers market. Farmers market's doing great. We have 3 more weeks. We've met with a little setback with our signs, but it's not the fault of the rec department, and it's not the fault of the town. The Department of Transportation decided we couldn't have signs in the right-of-way, so we've retreated and regrouped, and we'll be doing something different next year. We still have a couple of people who can't follow the rules, the vendors at the market who can't follow the rules, but most of us are doing great. We still have produce, we still have honey, we still have lots of things to sell, and we're looking forward to seeing you every single Monday. And I just have one sentence I want to say about Parks and Recreation Day Camp. This room is full of people with experiences and talents to share. I gave one little bee program this summer to the day campers at Parks and Recreation. Lasted an hour and 20 minutes, and I had so much fun, I had to go home and take a nap. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peck. Next is Malcolm Morrison.
Good evening. I'm Malcolm Morrison, 119 Southwest 21st Street. Topic is wind farms and beach communities. On Monday, August 12th, the U.S. Bureau of Ocean Energy Management held an open house in Southport to present the findings of a contractor study to assess visual pollution from a hypothetical, not an actual wind field, offshore. They model wind farms starting as close as 10 miles offshore, 15, and then 20 miles of the Brunswick County shoreline. Through the use of visual simulation and modeling, they presented what they believe is a realistic representation of how wind turbines could be viewed from the shoreline under various weather conditions and times of day at distances of that 10, 20, 15, and 20 miles offshore, using towers of different heights. Now, I support the concept of green energy. I've hugged a tree now and then. And I support the green energy off the coast of North Carolina and America's independence from the foreign oil and gas cartels of the Middle East. I am uncomfortable with drilling for oil and gas off the North Carolina coast. I support the need to protect our local tourism-based economy. However, we also need to diversify our economic base. Clean energy and its associated job training and jobs in Brunswick County is an opportunity we should examine with an open mind. This process will require a fair, balanced process of compromise between the developers of proposed wind farms, the citizens of our beach communities, our tourism industry, and our electrical utilities. Now, to achieve clean energy from any source, it must be affordable and competitive with oil and gas and nuclear on a level playing field, one that balances subsidies across the energy domain. And now subsidies come in many forms. We need to develop a vision of the future, one that we prefer. I believe we can get there. As I said, it will require compromise and trade-offs to achieve the goal of our vision. The process is what I refer to as getting to yes. A number of you have probably read the book by that title. The presentation by the U.S. Bureau of Ocean Energy Management was timely. It is our early warning, regardless of which side you're on, of this issue. The briefing was timely and therefore gives us time to consider trade-offs, compromises, and to make informed decisions. We must get involved, create our vision of a clean energy industry, and develop coordinated political leadership in our communities, county, state, and our elected federal representatives. Now, I'm not talking about conservatives or liberals leadership. I'm talking about unity against inter and intra-regional competition that would like to host the industry and the jobs that support the construction, operation, and management of any wind farm built off Brunswick County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. That's all that's signed up to speak under general comments. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak, please?
Madam Mayor, I do have a set of comments to read into the record.
Please.
This comes from Lisa Morelli, 7421 LaGrange Drive in Raleigh. As an Oak Island property owner, I'm writing to you to express my concern with the sewer district fees for which I have been assessed. I purchased 2 lots in May of 2010. 1 year later, I was assessed $8,400 to bring sewer lines to the properties with an additional sewer assessment of $276.26. In 2012, the annual sewer assessment rose to $1,152. The sewer fees for which I have been assessed over the last 2 years are excessive and well beyond the projected costs communicated from the City of Oak Island before I purchased the lots. I understand that costs must be distributed between undeveloped and developed property to finance and pay the obligations of the town's utility system. However, currently it does not seem like an equitable situation since developed property owners receive a credit for the sewer assessment fee. This puts the burden on the undeveloped property owner who is not currently receiving any sewer system benefits. I am requesting that the Town Council reevaluate the fee collection distribution between developed and undeveloped properties and/or find other means of financing the sewer assessment with savings or funding cuts from non-value-added town activities or projects. Please explain when and how the sewer fee reevaluation process will take place. The lots I purchased are small, with the majority of the area consisting of wetlands. My intention was to combine both lots to build one home on both lots. When I called the town of Oak Island to inquire about only installing one sewer for both lots, I was told that the deadline had passed for making such a request and that I would be assessed for sewer fees on both lots. Can anything be done now to combine and reduce the sewer assessment fees? I am assuming that since I have been assessed sewer fees for each lot, I am guaranteed the right to build a house on each property. Please confirm that is the case. Since I will not be able to attend the Town Hall meeting on August 20th, I request that my statement be read during the meeting and officially recorded. In addition, please send me a written response to my questions. Please confirm that you have received my email and will be able to accommodate my request. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And again, I assume you and our finance officer will be responding to
We have
her.
responded already. Mayor.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, next is council reports. Mr. Councilor Wynkoff, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. We did have a meeting with Capital Improvements this month, and as usual, they came out with a good report for us, and I'd just like to thank them for their dedicated work they do for the town. They do an outstanding job, and it's always a pleasure for them to bring something to us because we know the homework's been done. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Painter.
Just quickly, at our BBC meeting this past week, the main topic of discussion is also on our agenda tonight, so I don't really want to address it that much other than to say that we will be, the topic was the tragic drownings that have occurred in Brunswick County this summer, and the rip currents, the need to educate the public on the rip currents and to have take measures to see what we could do to prevent drownings in the future. And so we'll be talking about that later in the meeting.
Councilor Medlin, please.
I would just like to voice the same sentiments that Councilor Wynkoff voiced to our Capital Improvements Committee. Our meeting was very beneficial, and we greatly appreciate the work that you folks do. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
No report, Mayor Wallace.
Councilor Royal, please.
No report, but I do want to say how delighted I am to see so many people here this evening. I know that there's a particular issue that most of you are probably interested in, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Very quickly, first I'd like to thank Councilor Medlin for standing in for me at last month's meeting. As most of you know, some of you don't, my husband had a health issue. He's doing incredibly well now, and it's all resolved. Thank you for everybody for your help and for the thoughts that you've sent to us. We met with the Southeast Brunswick mayors last Thursday to have a presentation by the DOT. They did, at our request, the Southeast Brunswick mayors, an additional traffic count on Midway Road, which is the last to flood and first to drain whenever we have a storm event, but it's the curviest and it's only 2-lane. Turns out, by their count, we have some increased traffic on Midway Road, but not enough to warrant changing that project and making it 4-lane or 3-lane and straightening the road out a little bit. We're going to encourage them, before they fund that particular project, to continue to do these traffic counts. They did them, in May, so it wasn't a high traffic period. we're going to keep working on it and see if we can't get that road safer, but since it is our prime evacuation route. I was asked to present the certificates to the Barbie Library Summer Children's Reading Program on July the 23rd. That's one of the things you love about being mayor, is going to things like that. They had 25 children. Some of them had read more than 50 books over the summer. So I love doing stuff like that. This coming Friday and Saturday, August the 23rd and 24th, we have, sponsored by the Southport Oak Island Chamber of Commerce, Flock to the Beach, PHLOCK. It's a Jimmy Buffett-style beach bash. They have 2 printouts over there on the table about the events. On Friday, they're mostly going to have kind of a grub run. You can get the advanced tickets, so you'll see the places over there that you can get them. And they have a whole list of events, beach events, that they're going to hold on Saturday here on Oak Island. So please be sure and look at that list. And they hope to make this an annual event. It's another attempt with the Chamber of Commerce to start another annual event to draw people to the town and get the benefit of getting their visitation dollars to our town. And that is my report.
Madam Mayor,
Please.
question about the most recent information from DOT on Midway Road. Is there anything in those materials that addresses the future impact of the completion of the I-40 bypass?
That is, there's been discussions from the RTAC committee about the combination of the impacts from the I-40 bypass. They're still looking at where to run I-74. And we approved a resolution at the RTAC meeting last Friday to continue I-74 into Wilmington rather than cut it down at, I forget the name of the town, Grover, coming down through the Green Swamp. And then with that, they have redone some of the configurations of the bypass coming down. So that will all tie in, and that's what we're encouraging with all of the 4-lane median roads. 211, and then you've got Middleton, you've got 17, the new I-74, the bypass, and we got little snake curvy Midway Road trying to get to all of them.
I think the projections need to include that, and I'm not sure that they have.
We're encouraging them to with all of those projects in this area. And so far, we're getting the please continue to communicate with us response. But we will. Okay. Next is presentations, proclamations, and recognitions. I think we will go ahead. Let's see, we did the baseball team. Next, we have a presentation of a plaque from the Warrior Ride. Bob, I believe you want to do this presentation, please. And before you do the presentation, please give us a brief description of what the Warrior Ride that you and Deborah host every year, what you do.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Racine, and I reside at 1401 East Oak Island Drive. I am the president and founder of the Warrior Ride. For those of you who don't know who we are, we do adaptive bicycle events for combat wounded service members. If you ever come by my house and open up my garage doors, I have 64 bicycles in my garage that I can adapt to anyone who needs to be put on wheels. I have bicycles. If the fellas or the ladies have no arms, they can pedal with their feet. If they can't pedal with their feet, they can pedal with their arms. Whatever it takes to make them move, we can make them move. We made Oak Island our home in 2007. And since 2007, we have had major support from the town of Oak Island. And when I mean the town of Oak Island, the police department, Parks and Recreation, the Fire Department. We have an annual ride here every year, and our ride consists of 3.5 days. We start off with a bike fitting, and then we ride these young men and women for 3 days. They have no idea when they arrive how far they're going to ride. They ride no less than 30 miles a day. We ride only as fast as the slowest rider. We ride in a pack. No one gets left behind. And believe me that on every ride we do a challenge. Last year was for these young men and women to go across the new Ocean Isle Bridge. If you've been there, it's kind of high and zigzag. We were in Charleston, South Carolina this past spring. We went across the Arthur Ravenel Bridge. Again, that was a big challenge for them. And I have another, our ride this year is October the 2nd through the 5th. We'll be starting off at Carolina Beach. And I won't disclose their challenge because I don't want anybody to tell them. But we have started off with 9 combat injured people to ride with us. Today we did 1 event a year. Now we do 9 events a year, and we do it with about 35 combat wounded service members. And we'll be on Oak Island on the 5th of October, and I encourage everybody to come out and meet these young men and women. And when I say these young men and women, I'm not talking about 18 and 19-year-olds. I'm talking of people who are 19 to 60 years old. With our reserves and our National Guards being called to active duty, we're getting much older people being injured. And my wife and I travel from military base to hospitals and to homes. And our last 2 young men that we have recruited to come on our ride, when we arrived at their home, they had a shotgun sitting next to their bed, and they claimed they're going to take their lives. And I put them on a bicycle, and right now, the shotgun is in my safe at home. So I brought a plaque this evening, which was long overdue.
Bob, before you present that, I believe you yourself are a combat wounded veteran.
I'm a 26-year veteran. I spent 12.5 years in the Marine Corps, 12.5 years in the Army. I was served 3 tours of duty in Vietnam. I was a founding member of Delta Force, and as the mayor said, I'm also a combat wounded warrior. And I made a promise quite a few years ago. We weren't welcome home very good. That if anything like this ever happened again, I would stop whatever I'm doing in life, and I would dedicate my life to serving our combat wounded. And that's what I'm doing. And very happy about doing it. Now we'll present the plaque.
Please.
This is long overdue. It was supposed to be presented quite a few months ago, and I was so busy traveling with our troops that we didn't. And right now we're on a little break until next month. And let me tell you, something that has really broken and made us happy. You're all familiar with Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. He called us a few weeks ago and asked if we would do a ride in Charleston called the Lieutenant Dan Warrior Ride. We are going to have, right now, we already have 257 combat wounded warriors who are going to do a bicycle ride with us in that Charleston area. And most of them are all amputees or blind. So it was an honor for us. The plaque is made out to the town of Oak Island. It says, an appreciation for your selfless dedication in support of our mission for American wounded heroes. Thank you for your support in our challenging adaptive cycling events. And with our heartfelt thanks, thank you, the Warrior Ride. And I'd like to present that to the town council, and the mayor.
We will proudly hang this downstairs. And next, to follow that one, we have a proclamation for Constitution Week. Let me get that page. And this request for the proclamation for Constitution Week was sent to us by the Daughters of the American Revolution. It's very short, so I'm going to read this one too. Whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the 226th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, now therefore I, Betty W. Wallace, as Mayor of the Town of Oak Island, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week and urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities with which that privilege involves. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the Town of Oak Island to be fixed this, the 20th day of September, 20th day of August. This is August, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
20th day of August
I just included what they sent.
of the year of our Lord, 2013. I was very proud to include that one. And now, you guys got some tough acts to follow. Please, Mr. Foster, please introduce the
Just as a
presentation.
matter, a little bit of history on this. The board, several months ago, I guess it was back in March or April, directed the town manager, me, to send out an RFQ for a coastal engineering company to submit qualifications for a comprehensive shoreline management plan. In that plan, in the RFQ, we asked that the company be prepared to include the areas of the total beachfront, Lockwood Folly Inlet, the Eastern Channel, Davis Canal, and make recommendations to the town of the best way to manage those areas and being able to protect them from potential erosion and working with them on the best way to handle dredging and associated duties. So we had two responses. We had one from Coastal Planning and Engineering, and we had one from Moffitt and Nichols. And Moffitt and Nichols is here with us this evening to make a presentation and tell us how good they are, which I'm sure they are. And I'm going to introduce Jeffrey Sheldon, who's going to be the lead presenter on this. And if you want to introduce everybody else, you're welcome to, Jeff.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you all having us here this evening. As you said, my name is Jeff Sheldon. I am a Vice President and Senior Coastal Engineer with Moffitt Nichols here in North Carolina. With me tonight is Johnny Martin, another Senior Coastal Engineer with Moffitt Nichols, Steve Dial, President of Dial Cordy Associates, and Don York, also with Dial Cordy. They'll also be jumping up here. I'll just get things started tonight. Bottom line with this project, that we always want to do from the beginning is keep in mind the goals of our client. I mean, that's what it's all about, solving your problems, meeting your goals. And I guess I need to wait till these get here. Sorry. They're on the screen. Are they up on your all screen?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So, let's say, the key is to keep your goals in mind from the beginning. You know, long-term beach shoreline management program, the Folly Inlet management program, and trying to improve Davis Creek. And so from that tonight, our folks will talk a little bit about various strategies that we have to help you achieve these goals. As you can see on the board, basically it comes down to we want to do this in a cost-efficient manner and to do it in a very timely manner. I mean, that's the bottom line. Meet your goals, reasonable cost, and very efficiently from a time standpoint. So in order to do this, we pulled together our team, which I'll discuss a little bit, but mainly it's Moffitt Nichols and Dial Cordy. what we have brought on this team are North Carolina-based experts who can hit the ground running. All of us have worked in this area, other areas in the North Carolina coast for many years. Myself, I've been here for 28 years working with Moffett Nickel in North Carolina and elsewhere. We're all ready to hit the ground running on this project. There'll be very little learning curve, as we've just done some work similar to this for Bogue Banks, which Johnny will discuss in a little more detail. Again, it will help you all meet your goals. We understand the coastal processes here. All of us, have a long-term commitment to North Carolina and to working with our clients here. We'll all be here. This project isn't going to just be over in a few months. To reach the ultimate conclusion may take a year or several years. All of us are in a position where we can help you through all those years. We also have all developed strong relationships with the various stakeholders, state and core relationships. This is a organizational chart. It was in our RFP. You have the resumes of our staff. Recognize that these are just the lead staff that are listed here. The one thing this team brings also is we're a very broad and deep team. It's not as if we just have one or two or three even key people to work on this project. We've got, in Moffett Nickel alone, we've got over 50 coastal engineers, more than a half dozen just here in North Carolina. Dow Cordy also has extensive experience in depth in North Carolina. A few things I do want to mention about this, though, is we've got the capabilities in all your key areas you'll need to make this a successful project. The coastal engineering and management area, dealing with the environmental permitting, having a good local coastal surveyor who can get the transects done properly. We also, because we're a moderate-sized firm, we have a lot of niche specialties in our firm, including some water quality experts. Jason Dahl here in North Carolina has been doing work for over 30 years. We also have some dredging experts like Jack Fink, and in fact, from that line, just last week, we bid out a $80 million dredging project. His estimates came within 1.5% of the low bidder. So we were quite pleased with that. Now, a quick little background on Moffett Nickel. It was originally founded in 1945. Our focus has always been on the waterfront from our beginning. We are the nation's most experienced firm providing these kinds of services, as we've been doing it now for almost 70 years. We are currently working for the town as well as Caswell Beach on the Corps Sediment Management Plan, giving you all some expert advice. As I mentioned, our North Carolina office has been here since 1981. I've been working out of that office since 1985. In fact, just the other week we were kind of going through some of our files, and I actually found an old report I've forgotten about that I had done for y'all when back at the town Long Beach in 1991. So our history is many years here over those years. As I mentioned, we've got 50 staff up in Raleigh, 6 coastal engineers with over 75 years experience. We've got a complete set of coastal engineering capabilities up there to basically give you an effective project. Let Steve talk a little bit about Dow Cordy.
Good evening. Steve Dial, President of Dow Cordy. I reside in Wilmington, as does Don. Our office is in the old Murchison building downtown, and we've been there since 1998. We're an environmental consulting firm. What we do is provide environmental-related services such as coastal and marine resource surveys, sand source studies, such as what we've done for the Corps for Brunswick beaches off of Jaybird, Frying Pan Shoals. And most importantly, we prepare environmental documents like environmental assessments or environmental impact statements. And our work in the Southeast has included performing these types of services that we're looking to do for you for over 30 beach restoration projects, 5 inlet management projects, and a number of other documents that we've done for predominantly coastal municipalities, for the Corps of Engineers, and other federal and state agencies. Again, we've worked closely with, I think Jeff and I have been working together for over 20 years. Our staff have worked together for over 20 years, so we work together well. Most importantly, the Bogue Banks Master Plan project, which is setting the trend and precedence for direction in the state. We've worked together now, I think, for 3 years on that. And we're also working for your neighbor, Holden Beach, on preparing their EIS and permitting for the East End project. And I'll let you go. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And just also want to mention a couple other team members. Charles Jones, I think probably many of you know him, former DCM director, will be helping us with any environmental compliance and permitting issues. We also have a woman-owned business, Geodynamics, to do all the topographic and bathymetric surveys and geological investigations. They've been doing such surveys here along Oak Island, Caswell Beach, and many of the other beaches for several years. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Johnny and Dawn. They'll kind of go through our project's history and how we plan to approach your all's project.
Okay, Dawn and I are going to kind of tag team this, and Mayor, I appreciate what you said about having to follow that presentation. I was greatly moved by it. Thank you, sir, for what you're doing. I really appreciate that. All right, now, so let me think about engineering for a while. So anyway, what we've been learning here lately to help you guys out. We've been working on this project for Carteret County for the last couple of years. We had a little bit of a interrupt where we had the post-Irene renourishment project as well. But some things that we've been learning for this engineering report. We've been looking at determining the sand volume needs for 50 years for all of Carteret County. We've also been doing geological investigations to determine where the sand sources are to meet that need. We've also been doing a lot of work on retooling the FEMA triggers. I won't spend a lot of time on this, and I don't want to hit anybody in the eye with this, but anyway, this profile that we show here, just to give you a feel for how Carteret County does things, is from the top of the beach out to -12, which is sort of the outer bar. This is sort of the volume of sand that they look at as their beach protection. So their FEMA trigger is right now, they go out and measure this every year, and if it falls between 225 cubic yards per linear foot of beach, that's when they say we have to go out and nourish the project. And their commitment to do that is then what allows them to get the designation as a FEMA engineered beach, which then allows for any federally declared disaster events. Then FEMA will come in and pay for the amount of sand that's lost during that event. But you do have to have a monitoring program and to be able to quantify those effects. The other thing that we're doing as part of that feeds into it is meeting their static line exceptions requirements. Again, the requirement there is you have to show that you have both the sand availability or the sand volume available and the funding to put that sand on the beach for 25 years. Then they will allow you to, then if there's anything that doesn't meet the current setbacks, that then those lots can become buildable again. So we're currently helping them with that as well. The Bogue Inlet study that we're doing as part of that master plan is to look at a safe box for stability. So what we're doing here is for Bogue Inlet, we're saying, okay, if you allow the channel to wag within this box, everything's okay. It's only when it gets outside of this box on either side of the other that the inlet's going to become unstable and affect infrastructure on one side or the other. So the permit agencies have been very open to that sort of approach and whatnot for that sort of inlet stability type project and approach.
Yes, Dawn York here with Dow Cordy & Associates. As Steve indicated, Dow Cordy has been working with Moffitt Nickel on the Bogue Banks Master Beach Nourishment Plan for the last several years. We've actually developed the first programmatic environmental impact statement in the state and working as a third-party contractor with the Corps of Engineers and working very closely with the Division of Coastal Management to acquire all the permits necessary for the county and the Shore Protection Office to move forward for beach protection for the next 50 years.
Just one other project to talk about a little bit is the recently completed post-Irene project. This was a post-storm recovery project. We placed about 1 million yards of sand over 3 reaches that were about 6-7 miles of the beach, placing it at about 20 to 25 cubic yards per foot. What was unique about that project is that it was the first BOEM lease in North Carolina for sand placement, so we had to deal with the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management because it was out past the 3-mile limit. We also got FEMA reimbursement for half of the project cost. The reason that it didn't get it for the full amount is because the county had been doing some projects with the Corps 933 type and had been building out the beach even further than what they said they would maintain with it with the FEMA triggers. So, but still FEMA agreed to pay for the mobilization of the dredge, which is a $4 million expenditure, and also paid for 200,000 yards. So then the county and the towns took advantage of that Delta project. Since the dredge was already going to be there anyway, you know, it doesn't cost on a unit per unit cubic yard basis, it doesn't cost that much more to add additional sand. So it was a way for them to take advantage of the federal funding, not through the Corps aspect as normal, but through FEMA.
From an environmental standpoint, Dow Cordy worked very closely with Moffatt and Nichol during this project. We developed an environmental assessment for BOEM, as well as went through agency consultation for endangered species. We also worked with the Corps of Engineers on their general permit 291 permit process. All approvals, permits, and everything, lease agreement, were acquired within 1 year. In addition, during these two projects, as we discussed, Dow Cordy and Moffatt and Nichol have developed extensive relationships with the Corps of Engineers through our third-party contracting agreements, as well as other state and federal agencies in North Carolina.
Okay, so that talks about what we've been doing in Bogue Banks, but how does that apply to you? So what we've kind of laid out is a tiered approach for the project at Oak Island if we're fortunate enough to be selected. What we'd like to do first is complete a feasibility level study to determine estimates of the project needs and costs for all three of the items that you outlined in your RFQ. For the beach protection and shoreline needs, for Lockwoods Folly inlet management, and Davis Creek enhancement. And a lot of these things have some interplay and interlocking mechanisms. So then that allows you to make a fairly small investment for us to go out and use available data to determine the range of the magnitude of the issue. Then we come back and report that to you. Then you can decide if you want to move forward with this part, with this part, with this part. We can put it in manageable pieces so that you guys aren't extending yourselves financially any more than what you're comfortable in doing. So it puts the whole process in your control. We're giving you our engineering guidance, but you decide how quickly we move forward and how far we move forward. So how that works is we have the 65% design, the feasibility study, multiple phased approach. We submit it to you guys, you review, then you decide which way we move forward, and then get to the 100% answer, or the final answer, and then go to implementation. So this is just sort of a graphic to kind of show what we mean by that, and so the feasibility study will be like what we, as engineers, say a 65% design level around a rough order of magnitude. We'd look at historical evaluations, looking at all the data, and doing a lot of analytical analysis, not getting into detailed modeling or anything, saving that for if you want to go down that road later. We envision that these study costs would be anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000, really depending on how much data you do have and how far down the road we can go with the available data that is there. So it really becomes on how tight we can make the answer. And we think that could be done in 4 to 6 months. Again, this is a lot bigger process for going down to the 100% answer, to go from the 65 to the 100% answer. But this is the kind of process that would be involved in all three of these. They could be combined or could be singled out depending on what your guys' needs are and your budgets are. But that kind of timeline we're talking about would be more of the 1 to 2 year time frame. It really would depend on the level of inlet study that would be required on Lockwoods Folly, as well as going back and the amount of work that might have to be done on Davis Creek. So the cost for that kind of study would be in the range of $250,000 to $750,000, and that's assuming that additional geotech and environmental investigations would not be needed. That the work that the Corps has done for the 50-year project would be adequate for permitting. So how are we going to get there? So we've broken it up into the three aspects: the beach and shoreline management. Again, we want to review the existing data, conduct the analytical analyses, and we'll go over some examples of what that will look like here in a second. Identify the sand sources and let you know of any additional field investigations that might be required for later phases if it doesn't quite meet the DCM sediment criteria rules. Determine the likely requirements for the FEMA triggers and static line exception. Determine the volumes from the S&P. I mean, I think this is going to be one of the real critical things. As we were sitting in that meeting about the AEC the other week, is really one of the things that is, I think, critical for you guys, for Oak Island, is to really be involved with that sand management plan and also be pushing the Corps to where now that the sand sharing between Bald Head Island and this side is now, before it was a big project and you got it every third year, you and Caswell did. Now it's going to be, the project's going, you're going to get sand every time, but it's going to be split 2/3 on Bald Head, 1/3 on this side. So my concern about that, and what I think you guys should really be pushing for, is to make sure that the Corps is going to fill those historical areas and the historical limits, because since they're kind of held to a least cost approach, the problem I see coming up is that they're not going to be wanting to put sand as far west in the future. So I think that's real critical to fight that battle. That's a place there's hills to die on. That's a hill to die on.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's for free. So anyway, sorry, I got in a preacher moment there. But anyway, so we would want to investigate funding options as well for future project planning and implementation.
And from an environmental permitting standpoint, Dial Cordy will work closely with Moffitt and Nichol through the feasibility approach and study to investigate various permitting options. We've highlighted a couple of options that we feel are very well suited for the beach and shoreline management option, in looking at the Corps' general permit availability, and I think that is a very efficient from a cost and time standpoint. We also can conduct an environmental assessment, or we could also tier off the Brunswick County Beaches 50-year draft EIS, which they have already developed. And so I think that we have all of that data available to us. As Johnny mentioned, going through the feasibility study, we're going to look at and analyze all available and existing data that we have already and that's out there in databases through the Division of Coastal Management, through the Corps of Engineers. We know that Dr. Bill Cleary has been conducting profile since the 90s. We also, Dial Cordy has been working with Holden Beach over the last year and a half on their East End Shore Protection Project. So we have a lot of existing environmental data from permitting standpoint, as well as environmental biological data as well. And the figure you see on the right-hand side is an example of geotechnical data that Dial Cordy collected for the Corps of Engineers in support of the 50-year project.
And what we mean by bracket the solution there, one of the things I think is real critical for us as your consultants is to, through this feasibility study, is to at least come up with what we think the range of options are going to be. So what we want to do is we want to come up, and don't quote these numbers, but this will be instructive. So we want to tell you that, look, the annual need for sand along Oak Island is between 200,000 and 500,000 yards. So the purpose of the feasibility study is to come up with what that band is, bracket the solution. That way we kind of know the range of the problem that you're talking about and what you're going to be trying to chew off. The purpose of going to the 100% is to figure out, well, is that 400,000? Is it 350? That's when we're kind of tightening down and kind of getting the laser focus on it.
In addition, this is an example of available data to us. This is Sea Beach amaranth, which is an endangered plant that does exist on Oak Island. And we've already received lots of data from the Corps of Engineers, and this is just an example. The next slide shows a table that we will be using for any environmental permitting documentation. And just this table shows that this plant in particular does benefit from beach nourishment.
So what do we know from a coastal engineering perspective about Oak Island? Well, we know that net sediment transport is to the west. We know that there's a reversal area somewhere in the middle of Castle Beach where sand is pushed toward the inlet or pushed eastward in this area and westward. So that creates a little bit of an area that is sand starved, which is probably in line with the area where they've had to put the sand historically sort of on Caswell and into Oak Island. So that's one of the main reasons for the first hot spot. We know that there's been nourishment actions here, 2001 with the Harbor Deepening Project and the Turtle Habitat Restoration Project, as well as the project that was done in 2009 that you see here on this graphic. The dashed lines actually show you the two areas that were identified in the Corps' GRR as the areas that would be nourished during the 50-year project. So again, it kind of lines up with this area that's a combination of Oak Island, Caswell Beach, and then here within westward, the western portion of Oak Island. So what the Corps has said in the 50-year project is that bigger is better. So we have a pretty large dune and berm system here, and they designed it to a 50-year storm. Well, that's a pretty big project, and what that ends up costing is about 7.5 million cubic yards for the initial project, and then 3.5 million cubic yards of renourishment every 6 to 8 years. So just within Oak Island proper, and I see everybody just rolling their eyes and blowing air out because of these numbers, how large they are, is that the initial project is $82 million, and the renourishment every 6 to 8 years is $32 million, with Frying Pan Shoals being the major source. We know that that's too large of a project for you guys to chew off on yourself. So the Johnston County boy knows that. Anyway, so we have some available data here. The Cleary transects are partial. They only go out in the wading depth. That they will be of some use. What we will do for this analytical approach is to develop volume change relationships on the side where we have full transects, where the Corps has been monitoring for the past 10 years, and sort of say, okay, well, we see this much loss, and this is what the transects look like, the full transects look like on the eastern side. How does it compare to what it looks like on the partial transects on the western side, and how can we just sort of ratio a volume loss difference, at least from an analytical perspective, without getting into a lot of modeling? We would recommend investigating the use of full transects in the future. That's just only going to help you from a FEMA perspective, and then if you do end up going down the road, we're trying to get the FEMA engineered beach designation. What do we know about the bar sources? Well, we know that there's 4.2 million cubic yards in Yellow Banks. The Corps did not include that in their GRR, saying that it was probably marginal for beach compatibility. We'd probably like to revisit that, but anyway, we've taken it at face value, at least initially. There's some material offshore that Holden Beach has already gone through the full permit process for, 3.3 million. Dr. Cleary's done some work. There's Jaybird Shoals that has 33 million cubic yards. We've had some hesitation about that, just given how close it is to shore and how it might affect flow patterns within, and how it might affect Caswell Beach, also your area, as well as Fort Caswell. So we would look at that, but just know that might be a little bit of there would be some cautionary use of that site. And of course, you have Frying Pan Shoals, which has 35 million cubic yards. And that looks like a long way, but we just completed the Post-Irene project with the ODMDS for Carteret County, and it's roughly about the same distance for that. So, it can be done and has been done to that distance. Just real quickly, some of the core data and what we've already started looking at for you guys. Here's the Caswell Beach, Oak Island town limits from station 2100, and then I guess around 58th, 59th Street to 31,000. What I'll point to you there is we've already been looking at some of this, some of the volume change, and when you calculate the background erosion, you net out the nourishment, subtract it out. In the first hot spot, we see that it's about 9 cubic yards per foot per year loss. So we compared that to what the Corps was saying that you needed with the big project. So the total initial construction cost was the $81 million. Their periodic construction cost was $32.4. We see that their nourishment estimate is that they're saying that the loss rates are around 14 cubic yards per foot per year. Well, the calculations we have with the monitoring data from the Corps show us about 9, so there's something that we can already reduce that volume down just without even doing any study. We also then looked, we don't have, on the western reach, we looked at the shoreline erosion rates, and it looked like that there was about a 4-to-1 change there. So long story short, this might be a little small, but what we're seeing is, we think that you can come down to, maybe $10 million every 6 to 8 years, $10 to $15 million every 6 to 8 years, rather than 32, just off the get-go. Now, the other thing that we learned is on Bogue Banks, the results of how big you have to build a beach for 50 years versus 25. So we found there that it was around 75% need. The 25-year protection would be 75% of the 50. So if you do that, the initial construction would be down 61. But I will say, too, that I think this number could go way down, because if we get out and we find that your dunes are higher, in many areas you may already have equivalent level of protection for 25 years. or we may pick a 20-year. So really, at the end of the day, that's what it's really going to come down to as far as this whole FEMA trigger and static line is really what's the level of risk that the town is willing to take, and what's your finances. I mean, that's the two things that we would have to weigh out with you guys to determine, what's viable for you. So what that will do is it'll put you on the hook for maintenance and, figuring out what that trigger is, but it will provide you with the FEMA post-storm funding. What we found at Carteret County is that roughly half of the erosion that they've experienced over the last 13 years has been storm-induced. So if we can't get the Corps to pay for it, maybe we can get at least FEMA to help pay for half of your erosion losses, if the analog is the same at Oak Island as it is for Carteret County. So we would have to do some adequate surveying and modeling to determine that, but then those results would also dovetail into the static line requirements. I promise we're getting close to being done. So Lockwoods Folly, inlet management. Of course, what we'd be looking at there is aerials and shorelines and determining historical dredging patterns. We'd also be wanting to look at times when the two ends of the adjacent islands were stable. What did the inlet look like at that time? We want to do some qualitative analysis of, some sort of analytical spreadsheet type analysis for water quality enhancements and enhanced flushings that we could estimate by improving that and then using, and especially with the Eastern Channel as well, tying that in. I think that would be a great idea to help out, especially with the western side. And that's a much nearer source than going to Frying Pan Shoals for the western hotspot. So we would have to we'd have to look and see what kind of additional field investigations might be needed for permitting. But again, that would be at the second phase if you decide to go down that road.
And for Lockwoods Folly inlet management, from an environmental permitting standpoint, again, we will be looking at various permitting options. One option would be looking at a general permit 291 with the Corps of Engineers. That seems to really provide a lot of time and cost efficiencies, considering how much work has already been done on Lockwoods Folly Inlet. And as you may know, the Division of Water Resources is currently conducting a feasibility study to look at permitting options for all of the federally authorized inlets in North Carolina. So we would love to dovetail and partner with the state to look at how the town of Oak Island can benefit that with that study. And as far as, again, from a cost and time efficiency standpoint, we would like to use only existing readily available data during the feasibility study so that we can look at various options. And Division of Coastal Management, as you know, and as well as the Corps dredging records for navigation and maintenance. Dr. Cleary, again, has profiles as well as Holden Beach. As I mentioned earlier, Dow Cordy is currently working on the East End Shore Protection Project for Holden Beach. We have gone through a draft engineering report as well as looking at finishing up our draft EIS. So the figure that you see in the right-hand corner on your slide is actually a year 4 modeling analysis of widening Lockwood Folly Inlet. So again, you're at a really good time to look at this sort of solution, as there's already a lot of information being developed for this.
So what do we know about Lockwoods Folly? Some additional things. We know that the Currituck was used in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s with nearshore disposal. So actually the Corps was doing more regional sediment management back 10, 20 years ago than they're currently doing now, because most of the work now that's been done for the channel is just side casting. So that's 135,000 cubic yards a year that's just being kind of moved around within the inlet at all and not really benefiting anybody. The beneficial use for the AIWW has favored the Holden Beach side historically. It's been around 48,000 cubic yards a year. We do caution that there might be some issues with shipwrecks and horticultural concerns that would limit the inlet expansion options, but we would push that as much as we could. And we would work to improve the current practices first before expansion is explored. I mean, we really think that dovetailing this with the work that the state's doing and trying to piggyback onto that would help a lot, just for as they're trying to better manage the sediment resources. With Davis Creek enhancement, it'll be a similar process. is what we're talking about for Lockwood's Folly as far as the type of data that we would be looking at. We'd be looking at historical dredging patterns. We understand there's not been a lot of dredging being done over the last number of years, but we would be looking to estimate the water quality enhancement, flushing, improved water quality that would be a benefit of doing this, as well as the improved navigation. Of course, the beneficial use here might be more wetland creation and oyster habitat. We don't know if the material is beach compatible, likely not, especially back up into the inland reaches, but we would definitely keep that on the table. But just in matter of full disclosure, we think that that might be more of the kind of beneficial use that we would see with that.
And at the BBC meeting last week, we had a great discussion about Davis Canal, and we understand that the original permit is unknown and cannot be found. I have put in a phone call to the Division of Coastal Management to discuss the option, as well as talk to Charles Jones, who's on our team, and he did indicate there would be a potential for variance if needed, considering Davis Canal as a primary nursery area. But we will keep in mind, obviously, that the historical use originally was navigation. As you can see here in the map, we will look at various options with permitting, as it potentially looking at enhancement or restoration versus management of Davis Creek. We do feel that perhaps funding through NOAA or with Division of Water Resources may come into play here. And as Steve Foster, we talked about the past Brunswick Conservancy efforts, looking at flow and geotechnical data that has been collected around Eastern Channel and Lockwood's Folly River. We feel that would be very useful here.
So again, we do know that it was originally dredged in the 50s. Maintenance is needed for water quality improvements. The sediment disposal issue would have to be resolved. So we would begin with a simplistic analysis to show the need, but we could ramp that up, especially if this is one of the things that you end up going to the next level with. What I'm showing you here is a 2D model that we did nearby for the Sunset Beach Bridge when it was replaced, and we were actually looking at these back canals in this area, and by opening up some of these areas, what the improved water quality and improved flushing capabilities would be in this area. So we've already been kind of doing some work germane to that nearby. So just a summary of the approach. So what we would recommend is that we start off with a feasibility study, looking at all three items, get you the 65% answer, 4 to 6 months, $50,000 to $150,000. Come back, talk to you guys, and there would be a decision point to move forward on all three individually, or if you want to move forward on all three. And then the final plan, design, and permits, the 100% answer would take 1 to 2 years, depending on the inlet work needed, and that would probably be in the order of $250,000 to $750,000. But I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
All right, I'll just wrap it up. Obviously, the simple question is, why should you select the Moffett-Nichol team here? I think the simple answer is that we are the team that can best meet your goals in a timely and cost-efficient manner. Based on our past experience, we've been there, we've done that. We've learned a lot on the Bogue Banks project. There's a learning curve there. Rudy paid that dime. You'll receive the benefits because we won't be having to go up that learning curve again. We know how to best approach this. We also got a lot of experience. As you know, we're working with y'all on the sediment management plan, so we can hit the ground running. We've looked at a lot of the information here already in support of that work. We brought to you a tiered approach to allow you to kind of go through this, decide what directions you want to take, when you want to stop, how far you want to proceed based on funding and other stakeholder issues. Repeating, we've been here for decades. We've got a lot of experience down here. All that's going to be to your benefit. Our team members here are committed to this project. We all want to work for the town. We would greatly appreciate the opportunity to help you all in this project and bring our experience, our capabilities, our expertise to this project to help make this a success. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll be happy to answer any questions if you all have any.
We'll take a break while we do questions. Why don't we please, let's take we've been in session almost an hour and a half. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then if you don't mind, stick around for after the break, and then the council can ask you the questions that they have. How about that? We will take a 10-minute break. Okay, we will call the meeting back to order. I will let the council members ask the questions of whichever representative they would like, and Council Royal, would you like to begin, please, with any questions you have?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any questions. What I would like to say is that I'm very appreciative of the homework you guys have done, and it is clear that you have done a lot of homework and put together the proposal and made some very pertinent points. And I like the way that, in terms of what our goals and needs are, and I like the way that you have structured the approach in terms of process and the pieces and breaking that down and keeping that control at the town level with the town's goals and the town's needs. So very well done. I thank you very much.
No questions, Mayor Wallace.
Councilman Medlin.
I have no questions either. Just a comment. I've sat through a lot of presentations in the last years, and most of them are usually about as clear as mud. Your report was very clear, very concise, and even I understood it. So I want to thank you for it.
No questions, Madam Mayor.
No questions.
And Betty, we will explain to you all of the acronyms later. There were far too many for them to explain, but it's still been here at 10 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you for the good presentation. Obviously, you did a good job because they had no questions. Very clear to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is adjustment and approval of the agenda. Councilor Medlin, I believe you have one adjustment you would like to make, please.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move item number 2 of old business to immediately be following the public comment session.
And we will do that immediately after calling to order the regular meeting. How about that? Before approval of the consent agenda. What we just did was move the discussion of the Community Resource Center issue to immediately following public comments on the agenda items. Any other council member have any adjustments?
And we did that so you folks won't have to be out here so late.
Yeah. You won't have to sit through everything else. Any other adjustments, please? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please.
Madam Mayor, motion to approve the agenda as amended.
We have a second by Councilor, motion by Councilor Painter, second by Councilor Royal. All those in favor, please. And it is unanimous. Okay, now we come to public comments on the agenda items. Virginia Hamrick, are you still here? Yes, ma'am, please. And please remember to give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak with an additional 2 minutes if you need it.
I'm Virginia Hamrick, 112 6 South West Street. I'm here tonight representing the Oak Island senior citizens that are participating in the CRC services. They are badly needed and greatly appreciated. And we, the members, wished you, the City Council, may find a way to continue our services. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Next is Ann. Pronounce your last name for me. Brigano.
And I'm at 5163 Elton Drive. And I'm also a senior, which is not my normal introduction when I introduce myself. But I'm here tonight because we do have an agenda. Mine is on behalf of my mother, Ruth Cortese. She's 92 years old, and her peers. I have heard a myriad of rumors pertaining to the senior program, which I'd like to have clarified. I believe the monies were allocated in June 2013 to June 2014, and it's less than 1%, and now it is looking to be changed. From a personal perspective, I have watched my mother blossom due to this program, making friends, knowing she was cared for, and giving her and the others a degree of independence. I'd like to know why some of it is being considered to stop. I know for myself, I'm a senior. If God willing and longevity gives me the same blessing as it did my mother, we're all going to want these programs. We're all going to need them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ruth Cortese. She must be.
It's my mother. She just inadvertently signed.
Okay. Pronounce her last name for me. Cortese. I was close. Next is Helen Cashwell.
Helen Cashwell, 3407 East Yacht Drive. I have a dream that I used to see in the Southern Living magazine, this advertisement. One inclusive retirement island, and it would read something like this. An all-inclusive retirement island. Come while you're young. Play tennis, fish, unlimited beach access, recreation activities unlimited, a senior center that provides enrichment classes, all the card games your heart desires, recreation center for senior meals, and when you can no longer drive, enjoy transportation for shopping and doctor's appointments. Now, how good could that be? I'll tell you that growing old is no fun, but the alternative is not too good either. We who are referred to as many of that bunch of old fogies are very human, and many, in their own ways, have contributed to the quality of life that the younger ones have enjoyed. As many visitors will attest to, these seniors brought their money, their assets, and all their possessions, and they retired here to enjoy what all of us do, the beauty and the peace that can be found here. Now, time has passed, and many find themselves without spouses, alone, and struggling just to manage their daily lives. I've witnessed their struggles. Houses needed repairing, upkeep on their properties, growing more difficult, and worst of all, their loss of driver's license and the ability to take themselves to doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, getting out of their own without explaining where and what they're going to do. Loss of independence can be extremely stressful and probably will contribute to shortening their lives. Over the past 8 or 9 years, I've encouraged all who find themselves without transportation to call the Brunswick Transport System. Several citizens have needed to go to Shallotte to have dialysis, an all-day affair. The problems have been many and unwielding at best. The bus would come if there was enough room, and if it would take very long, they wouldn't wait, and it was almost guaranteed that the citizen would need to take a cab home. That's very costly, and cabs most generally are not equipped to handle wheelchairs and walkers. Now, tonight you're going to vote on closing the transportation for our seniors down and all but sentence them to a really miserable life without much to look forward to. Calling on churches and neighbors to meet their needs is degrading, and it removes what little dignity they have left. I would ask you tonight to just project yourself into the future and say, if but for the grace of God, there goes me, and realize how important this issue is. Perhaps the numbers served aren't cost effective in the scheme of things, but what about heart effective? So little for so much.
Thank you, Ms. Cashwell. Next is Larry Parker.
I'm still at 604 East Beach, but I'm speaking for beach preservation now. I apologize for my anger earlier. Roseanne and I are dealing with the resignation of one of our dearest beach preservation members today, and it's primarily because she's just frustrated and says she can't take it anymore because we don't get enough support. So anyway, on the other side, I want to thank Councilman Wyckoff and Mayor Wallace and the town manager for getting a couple of items on our agenda, your agenda tonight, that are very important to beach preservation. And I just want to give you the committee's report on these things. We voted unanimously in favor of changing the ordinance to require that tents and awning poles and supports be removed at sunset along with all other gear. The tides now are very high. We have very little dry beach left, and we're endangering people who are walking at night. We're endangering turtles. Numerous people have fallen over these guy wires, and they still don't take the, we've got a picture here, if you'll kind of pass it along. This is right next to our junior beach turtle nest this year, and, you know, they left the awning cover on, and fortunately it blew not onto the turtle nest ramp, but at least it blew the other direction. But these are the violations that go on all the time, and we evidently can't enforce them, so it's going to be easier to say nothing should be on the beach rather than I encountered a false crawl a few weeks ago, turtle whose tracks were as wide as my arms outstretched, and she had crawled all the way up to the toe of the dune, and the only bare space that wasn't filled with beach oats and grass that's hard to dig through had an awning pole right in the middle of it, and she had to turn around and go back to the ocean and start over. These are the kinds of little things that are so important to beach preservation, and yet tourists really don't pay much attention to. So the other issue is the sharing of our Be a Beach Lovers campaign. This has been a very positive, highly successful campaign, and we do feel that the beach is cleaner, that there's more compliance than there was 2 and 3 years ago before we started this campaign, because we have signs, we have posters, we have refrigerator magnets, and so forth. Again, the Tourism Commission was all hot about this when it started, and they were passing out flyers when people checked in, and they were putting refrigerator magnets on the rental houses. They don't pass out flyers anymore. We brought refrigerator magnets to the meeting with the rental agents last year, and they left them in the boxes. They didn't even take them back. So it's so frustrating to get the kind of support that we think we should have for these things. A little background on the Be a Beach Lover campaign. I ran a $100 million advertising agency and marketing consulting firm in St. Louis, so I know something about this, and I served on the committee. We were half tourism and half beach preservation. We were able to come together on our goals and objectives for the campaign and the parameters for what we wanted it to accomplish. We were also fortunate to have 2 members of our Tourism Commission who were also on the Brunswick County Tourism Commission. The county spends millions of dollars every year through Smith Advertising in Fayetteville. So these ladies asked Smith Advertising if they would develop the theme and the logo for us, and they agreed to do it. And they did a magnificent job, and we didn't pay a dime for it. So it was a favor gratis based on our riding on the coattails of the Brunswick County Tourism Commission. So we don't feel like we should make such a big deal out of this gift and keep it from sharing it with anyone else. We have a wonderful potential partner in Hatteras Island Ocean Center that loves our campaign and would like to be licensed to use it in their area. So we didn't take a vote, but by consensus, we agreed to support this and try to move it forward to the point of trying to get town council approval and create some kind of licensing agreement. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Or?
No. This public comment period.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to stay around if my back can hold out, if you have questions during your debate.
I'm just glad to see you moving around as well as you are now. Richard, are you still here? Richard Bunce?
He said he was going to leave it.
Yeah, okay. That's all that's signed up. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Deanna, your neighbor there, would you like to speak and just say a few sentences?
My name is June Vineyard. I have been in this program for 18 to 20 years, before they even had vans. We went in cars. We cannot do without this program. I'm 81 years old. I've had a stroke. And 98. So you have to excuse me. We cannot do without this program because you're all going to get old or older someday. And you're all going to have to use some kind of program, whether it be this one or something else. But you're going to all have to use a program someday. I thank you very much.
Ms. Vineyard, before you leave, what is your address, please, ma'am?
I live on 46th Street.
Thank you, ma'am. She was not going to speak because she had had a stroke. I told her I understood every word she was saying. And I did find out the age range tonight. I don't know the age of the youngest child, but I know I saw one as young as 5 years old. And we had a participant earlier that had to leave to get some dinner that was 97. So we had a 92-year age range in our attendees tonight. Everybody, y'all keep coming when it's something else that you need to look at and not just one individual item. Come to every meeting. Okay, if no one else wishes to speak, we'll
Madam
go
Mayor,
on. Pardon?
I did have submitted comments from Roseanne Fortner, but they were essentially the same comments that Mr. Parker made. She even included the same picture. So if it's all right with
Okay.
council, I'll just include
We'll
those in
just
the minutes.
include those in the official record. Okay, we will call to order our regular meeting. Councilor Medlin, you wanted to move the number 2 old business, the discussion of the Community Resource Center. So please, if you don't mind.
Okay, I will. I didn't put it on the agenda, but I'll start. And I know there's been all kind of talk going around about what we were going to do, and there were even some things on TV that were not fully correct, that indicated that we were going to be making a lot of changes. And I'll just tell you where I am on this issue as a council member. And I'll start with our budget preparation for 2013. We did discuss this, the CRC, in our budget discussions, and no changes were made, and the program was funded for this year. And I just don't like to see us make budget changes in the middle of the year unless it's completely necessary. And I don't feel like this is completely necessary. I have a special place in my heart for older people because I are one now. I used to didn't know what they were. Now I are one. And I think that, and I know a lot of people disagree with this, and that's okay. Anytime we can help the elderly, whether it's a personal help or a town helping or a church or whoever, I think we need to do it. And this program certainly isn't a large drain on our finances. And I'm in favor of leaving it alone, leaving it like it is. And I would even, I know we've got to have further discussion, I would be willing to make a motion right now, but I think probably I better not do that.
Let's let Councilor Royal. Councilor Royal is the member that added this to the agenda, so let's let her speak next, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am the council member that brought it up initially in our May workshop. That the Community Resource Center, all of the programs that came under that umbrella are not core municipal functions. Those types of programs are typically administered at the county level, and of course some of the grant funding that has used for what appears to be the biggest part of the program that's the greatest service to the most of our citizens is the senior transportation program. And of course that is basically a subcontract of BTS, which is funded through and managed through the county, which is funded by the state and the feds. So, and no other municipality, certainly not in Brunswick County or any of the comparisons that the MAP study uses, has another town providing this kind of service, because it's typically done, again, at a different government level. Town of Oak Island has provided the different services through the CRC, and there have been a number of things that have come and gone, focuses, what have you, but what has developed as part of the greatest need, again, has been the senior transportation program. The after school and preschool, as I understand it, have already been eliminated. And that is the other piece, but was certainly something that was done even before the CRC was formally established by council. That happened the first year that I was on council. This is my 10th year, so I've had a long time involvement in that and looked at it. During the last couple of years, this council has looked at a lot of different things related to town departments and town functions and town services, and I felt like that we needed to complete that process by looking at the CRC and at how we were managing our teen center, and so I put those on the table. I think we have all learned a lot that we didn't know about what goes on in the types of services that are provided by both those entities. One of the things that it took a little bit for me to try and piece together, and I talked with Deanna before our meeting started here, over the course of the last 3 years, there have been a lot of adjustments and rearranging and reorganizing within because the CRC is still under the umbrella of the Parks and Rec Department, even though the funding is kept separate, just like the funding for South Harbor Golf Course is kept separate, so we see how that tracks that piece of the program, but there's still some responsibilities under the broader Parks and Rec umbrella. And there's been a CRC assistant that was there. We're in this current budget year was there the previous 2 budget years, and what I had saved out to look at how those organizational processes changed. But there's a CRC director, which is Deanna, and there was a CRC assistant position, which is a part-time position. My understanding was that position, for the most part, supported or gave a great deal of support to the senior programs, and particularly the transportation program. Well, in this year's budget, we cut that. Apparently, the position was there, but wasn't utilized so much with that. It was utilized more with the preschool and the after-school in some reorganization that occurred last year. And I don't know that council as a whole was aware of just how all of those changes were being made and how it may or may not affect programs. Having said all that, I think if it is the wish of council to continue the CRC for the functions that it provides and the services that it provides to our senior population, that you need to add back the CRC assistant position. If you want to ultimately not provide that service and rely on transitioning to county level functions, which typically do that, then you need to make a commitment to do it at the end of this budget year. But that's just seems to be how it shakes out to me. You either continue doing it and fully staff it to make it function, or you say this is the last year and move forward from there.
Thank you. Councilor Kaiser, do you have any comments, please, before Councilor Medlin makes his motion?
I have no comments.
Councilor Painter?
Well, I'll just make a couple of comments. We do have a grant in the amount of $20,000. My understanding is that grant hopefully will stay intact, but it possibly may not. I view this as somewhat of a duplicative service, although the service that's provided by our town is certainly more flexible and more personal. And I know that our seniors that we care very much about are a lot of them are very reliant on that service. And I did find out that it is a service that's provided only to homebound seniors. So that also was news to me. I do think that we need to provide the service with the least amount of cost that we can. And I know that, I'm pretty much in favor of, I'm not in favor of doing away with it as of October 1. But I would like to see if there are any alternative agencies around or groups around that could possibly step in and think about transitioning this service at some point in the future, especially if the grant money is not going to be forthcoming. So, but I do encourage also, I know that our church has a transportation service, and I would encourage other churches on the island, if you don't already have a ministry, to set up such a ministry. And I'd also encourage all the citizens on the island to look around your neighborhood. We all know what we have been taught, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And therefore, I think that it shouldn't be a degrading thing we should know our neighbors, and we should know our seniors in our neighborhoods. I know that, so I would encourage everyone to make yourself available, if you're able, to the seniors in your neighborhood. So that being said, I don't know that I would want to add back any additional cost to the program. So I would hope that our town manager could figure out how to do it at the least cost possible.
Thank you. Councilor Weinkauf.
Yes, Madam Mayor. There's one thing about seniors. They're really dear to my heart. I've been in the healthcare business for 17 years now, and most of it's been with seniors. The very first thing I was taught in this business is quality of life. And that's what we do where I work at, is to make sure they have the quality of life that they deserve. And our seniors gave a lot. They've been very active. And, trying to take something away from them really It doesn't sit well with me. This is in the budget. It was planned in the budget. And the way I stand right now, I think, leave the budget alone and leave it the way it is.
Thank you. Councilor Medlin, now, I believe would you like to make a motion now?
Yeah, I would. I was just trying to think of,
Do we need to take any action?
I think we do.
Okay, please.
We do. Since it was brought up and it's in our packet that it was asked to be eliminated by October the 1st, I think we need to take action.
Okay.
I would, in light of that, make a motion that we leave the CRC, the senior home transport service, and the referral services that are listed in our packet is the way they are. And if they need to be looked at any point in time, they would be done during the budget sessions and workshops in 2014.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second from Councilor Kaiser. Any further discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Please.
I'd like to ask two things. I'd like to ask if it should be a separate motion, if it could be part of this, because council has not taken action to formally eliminate the after-school and preschool programs. Would that be appropriate to do while we're discussing the CRC? And if so, would there be a willingness to maintain the funding that's used for that to put back the CRC assistant position part-time to assist with the senior programs?
Those would probably be, I would think, Madam Clerk, you can help me out here, probably be a separate motion because it's not to do with the senior transport service and services part of the
Is that not a personnel issue that our town manager should deal with?
We don't have a position funded for the CRC assistant.
I understand that.
Well, I believe that they are managing with the personnel. I do remember that discussion. I believe they're managing with the personnel.
I've been in
they have
conversation with Ms. Beeson about the possibility of trying to reorganize them into having some kind of help on the senior service side through the rec department, or providing some help back there. And I think Kelly's telling me if I'm wrong, but I think we were looking at possibly trying to use a part-time person or a person in your staff to help Deanna with that if necessary. Yeah.
Okay. So that resolve that. And
Not to my satisfaction, but thank you.
thank you. Any further discussion, please? All those in favor, please. All those opposed. Motion carries 4-1 with Councilor Royal dissenting. And with indulgence of council. With indulgence, a week from Saturday, we'll be going up to Denver at the East North Carolina to celebrate my mother-in-law's 91st birthday. 91st birthday.
A long time.
Yeah. Okay, next is our approval of our consent agenda. Chair will call for a motion.
Madam Mayor?
Please.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a
as
second?
In the packet.
Second.
It's in the packet. Second by Councilor Medlin. All those in favor, please. And it is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, honey. There are no items removed from the consent agenda. Next is committee appointments. She wasn't going to speak because she's embarrassed because of the way she speaks. First is one position on the Animal Control Hearing Board ending in April of 2016. We have an application by Margot Deach. Do we have all those in favor of appointing Margot to the Animal Control Hearing Board, please? And it is unanimous. We have an application for one term ending in June 2015 for the Oak Island Emergency Services Advisory Board. We have an application by Edgar R. Hardy, Jr. All those in favor of appointing Mr. Hardy, please. Okay, and it is unanimous. Planning Board, we have two terms ending August of 2016. We have 2 applicants. All those in favor of appointing Richard Marshall, and I believe this is a reappointment?
For both of these.
Yeah, for both of these. So let's just take them together. Richard Marshall and Clay Jenkins to these 2 terms, and it is unanimous. Next, we have committee reports. Is there any committee member here that wishes to make a report tonight? Thank you. Next is administrative reports. Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a number of items that Council Royal asked me to update everyone on, and she was gracious enough to allow me to put this under the manager report rather than listing these as separate topics. I appreciate that. I think as we all do with it. The first, there were several items, but let's just start with the MAPS study and timeline for completion, and I'd like Ms. Mallard maybe to make a report on that. So, Sheila, if you don't mind.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Since the presentation by Becky Veazey with the MAPS group, we've gone through and reviewed the draft documents that were presented at that workshop. It's been very time consuming. I've had to meet with the majority of the department heads. I still have a couple left, but the majority of the review has taken place. We've gone through the job classifications. We've made the necessary corrections. They've gone back to Becky. And I did provide, and I was having some email issues still, but I did, hopefully all of you got an updated allocation list that I sent a few weeks ago. That's been a bit of a moving target because we've had some internal moves. So every time we have a move, I have to send Becky a revised allocation list. So today's version was hopefully the final version. She has offered up 3 dates for you to choose from. The first being September 19th, October 10th, or October 17th for her to come back for the follow-up presentation. What we would like to do, or what she would like to do, she's going to finish the final drafts and send the documents, so you'll have the documents for at least a week prior to the final meeting. If you have any questions for her or anything you'd like to discuss or anything addressed, she does have the list. Councilor Royal had several requests at the last meeting. She is addressing those. She's revising the org charts, putting the number of positions with the pay grade in the org chart. She's given a detailed org chart and updating, like I said, she's updating the allocation list. We've had some internal moves and some promotions, and that changed some of those adjustments for maybe the prior employee that held that position. So she should have those documents finalized within the next week. She'll send them to me for your review. If you have any questions that she can address beforehand so that she's prepared for those, or if you have anything that you've identified that needs a revision, if you could either email them to the town manager or to myself so that I can get them to Becky, that would be greatly appreciated.
What were the dates that you suggested?
September 19th, October 10th, or October 17th. And she's open any time on those dates. So if you will just pick a date and a time.
Lisa, what's the date for that conference in September that Steve and I are going?
I believe that's the 18th and 19th. Oh.
18th and 19th.
What's the date of our October council meeting?
And it was October 10th and the 17th was the suggestions.
Yes. One of those dates, wasn't that going to be a candidate forum?
October 17th is our candidate forum, but that's at 6 p.m. in the evening. Would she want to do it during the day?
She's flexible. She can do it during the day.
Okay.
Let's don't do that. Let's do the
Okay.
17th.
Yeah, October 17th is the candidate.
10th.
Okay. Everybody, please,
Those are council meetings.
if you've got your calendars, look at October the 10th.
That's not the council meeting.
What day is the council meeting is what I
The
asked.
council meeting is the 8th.
So it'd be the Thursday of that week.
Yeah, it'd be the Thursday immediately following.
It's good for me if it's good for everybody else.
October the 10th, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. suggestion, please.
10.
Councilor Medlin, would you like to make a motion that we schedule a meeting for October the 10th at 10 a.m.?
So moved.
So moved. Schedule a meeting.
I think Councilor Weinkoff said 9 o'clock would be helpful.
9 o'clock would be better for Councilor
That's
Weinkoff. Withdraw your motion. Remake your motion.
Just change the time to 9 or 10.
Okay. The motion is to hold the meeting for the MAPS presentation at October 10th at 9 a.m. in the morning. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Weinkoff. All those in favor, please. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Okay. Also, as another item, we'll do an update with is Brunswick County's assessment of the Oak Island sewer system. I had an opportunity last week to talk, or not last, I guess it was, Miss Ann Hardy. And she indicated 3 items that they had been looking for that aren't turning out favorably as far as the county taking the sewer system, wastewater system over. However, she emphasized that this doesn't mean they're not continuing to examine the possibility, and there are other items that they're looking at. But among the items that she said that could be a problem was the county bond coverage. That was due to the changes in accounting practices that the county's used under GASB and the outstanding bonds the county currently holds. Adding Town of Oak Island's bonds may create a coverage issue with their coverage bond holders. She said it's something that they're working on. There is a possibility there could be a resolution, but it depends on the bondholders as to what they might like to do with it. Secondly, the county was counting on refunding our bonds since they have a higher credit rating than does the town. And however, even if they did, it may be a problem because interest rates are heading north instead of south. And that may negate whatever advantage there might be for that particular possibility. Number 3, they were looking for economy of savings in the operation of our system by combining our system with their system. After doing an audit, which I think Mr. Kelly helped with for a couple, 3 days with county staff coming down, about 8 or 9 people, they determined that our operation was so extremely efficient and possibly even needed additional funding and positions to keep the thing operating. So their position was that we're already operating at low economy of scale as we can, and it probably wouldn't be any additional savings for them in that particular area. Now, I'd like to emphasize again that she says they weren't throwing the towel in, that they were still pursuing it, but that's kind of like where we're at on the sewer situation. Do y'all have any questions on that?
Didn't you say that they were still open to discussions of possible repurchase of some of our capacity or restructuring of that portion of the
They
debt?
said that they would still be open for discussions on that. That's correct. That pretty much wraps that up. Consultant's recommendation for sewer system financial issues. I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Word so that she can address that.
We had heard earlier on presentations from Doug Carter and DEC Associates as well. Bart Krebs from Raftellus Financial Consultants were here to give us information when we were doing the budget planning. I've been in communication with them since that time. We're continuing to work toward final documents as well as toward next steps for that. Bart from Raftellus has advised me that he should have the final documents ready for the town for the FFE by the end of September so that they could be presented to you in time to review them before the October meeting. Additionally, Doug Carter will be returning to Oak Island the week of September 30th into the first week of October to look at our next steps and long-term planning phase of work. And so we'll be continuing to evaluate at that point what actions we need to take. As a status update from what they had recommended before, the council approved the 11.75% rate increase for the sewer utility and for water utility rates, and those have been put into place in the billing system, and we are now billing at that higher rate in accordance with the council action. We've also taken action. The town manager worked with staff as we looked at the policies for not cutting off water in the past, where there was a little more lenience was given when people were having issues with paying their bill, and at this point we've taken a more strong stance in making sure that folks have to pay their bill to remain in service with their water and their sewer, so that we can ensure that we're operating with the revenues that are needed. So those are the actions and the status that we've taken up to this point, but you'll be hearing back more from both consultants in the next 30 to 60 days.
Any questions, anybody? Okay. Thank you. And the other, I guess, you might as well go ahead and talk about the software, I guess, too, Bonnie. Where you at?
We've also continued to evaluate the potential software vendors for the new software purchase for the town. For our billing and our financial systems, we have, to kind of back up and explain where we were in the process before, we had put out an RFP and we evaluated a number of different software vendors to see what they could provide to the town, because we've had continued issues with our software. We had site visits where 4 different companies came in and presented to us. From the site visit that they came here to present to us, we narrowed our 2 primary choices down and then began to look closer at those 2. I paid a site visit to another town that used one of those software items in the first week of July and wasn't convinced that everything would be magic and wonderful. So from that, what I intended to do was go back and look at other towns that use that same software, as well as evaluating the other. There's a significant price differential between the top 2 software vendors that have submitted quotes to us. And so because of that, it was really, I was hoping that the lower cost one would come in to do everything that we want it to do and really work well for us. We've not made a decision either way, and in order to help us facilitate making that decision, I have site visits scheduled this Friday as well as next Thursday at 2 more towns that use each of these 2 different softwares, so that we can take a look at what's working for them and what's not, and how the implementation process worked, and basically if they're delivering all that they promised to in the sales pitch. So we hope to have a recommendation to provide to council within the next 30 days, and therefore be able to have a contract to you by the October meeting as well. So we're working on all those issues. Thank you.
I would like to say that Ms. Word used one day of her vacation time in Delaware to go to visit the town that was. And the other thing I'd like to mention you didn't bring up, the cost of the software is only part of it. The bigger part of it's going to be a data entry into this thing, and once we marry this thing, it's marriage for life, you might as well say. So we're trying to do some good due diligence on this just to make sure we're not making a mistake. So that's where we're at on that. Code enforcement efforts, and I'm going to ask Mr. Crook to talk about all of his good deeds over the past few months. And
good deeds, depending on your perspective. I'll hit some of the, originally we started from the west end of the beach, went all the way down to southeast and northeast 46th. We had a lot of success there, but we have still some ongoing issues with people out of town. They don't know that they can't do it. We stop them when we can. We talk to them. We have worked pretty closely with some of the rental agencies. They'll go haul the stuff off. They're helping us out in that aspect. Started that as soon as Mr. Foster came on board. So we worked. That was the immediate thing that we did. Then kind of got into the commercial district. Some of the highlights, while they're not exactly 100%, Ed Pruitt and Reggie Hatcher down there on our little entrance to the island, they have been maintaining their respective properties, mowing it at least once a month. We still have a tractor that has become an Achilles heel, but I'm working on that. So Reggie and Mr. Pruitt are doing a good job there. MJV Holdings, which has been the big one, that's Mark Warren. It took about 6, 7, 8 weeks to get them to realize we meant it. When they did realize we meant it, with some pretty stern letters, it came into pretty good compliance. And I think it was a week and a half ago, Mr. Foster asked me to write him a letter, which I did, thanking him for all their efforts. Also informed him that I would be stopping in periodically to pay a little visit and keep him motivated to stay on track. And last week we got a bunch of tires moved off. They tend to accumulate. There's some other people in the commercial district that I've already started with, notably, and you may not know them by name, but Boys Under Their Hoods, the business, and then Arnold, Arnold Smith, who owns the business next to him. They've got some issues. We're working on that. Started Monday with them. Murray Edwards owns the fenced-in structure behind the, is it the Flying Pig? We're starting on him again. He's starting to accumulate a few boats. But as far as the general code enforcement to date, we've successfully gained compliance throughout the whole island on between 70 and 80 residences that required letters, responses through certified mail receipt like that, multiple contacts. That doesn't in any way include the simple people that you call and, oh, I didn't realize it wasn't being cut, I didn't do this. So with the people that that have complied with face-to-face communication or just a, hey, bud, you need to take care of this, look at your neighbors, you probably got 100 plus, that kind of compliance. Recently, Mr. Foster and I completed another survey between 79th Street Northeast and Southeast, all the way to 57th Street Northeast and Southeast. What we found was 15 residences with unmaintained grass, 3 junk vehicles, 2 abandoned structures, 7 residences with accumulation of debris, 8 locations of illegal dumping in the right-of-way, 1 boat left in the right-of-way, 1 location where a tree service, which we're working on, I'm working with the police on that as well. It wasn't really a tree service, it was a couple guys in a pickup truck filled up one of our streets with about 15 trees. We had to get John's guys to clean that up today. Couldn't pass the street. And let's see here. This tree service, and then in addition, we found 5 areas where the right-of-way may need some special attention with mowing and stuff like that. All in all, I think we've made some progress. It's not finished, but we're making progress.
Wow.
Question. Are we continuing to encourage people to call in? I know there were a lot of calls from folks all over the island about calling in things that they saw, particularly in the right-of-way issues.
Sure.
Are we continuing to get them?
Yeah, and one of the hard things with code enforcement is if we don't get a witness, or if we don't have if the person who calls in is not willing to turn in the person they saw do it, I can go accuse them, I can do whatever I want, but if they say they didn't do it, I got no leg to stand on, especially if it's dumped on town right away. So what happens to those is that they fall back on the taxpayer to pay for it. But yes, absolutely, we're encouraging. I'm encouraging anybody to call me. When I talk to them, I try to tell them, look, if you will give me more information, I've got few tools other than civil action. But if somebody's dumping illegally, it's still littering. Mm-hmm. If I can have a witness and we can take it to court.
Can I always say one thing too right here? If we catch, I was appalled at some of the stuff that was over in this last section that we looked at, TVs, stuff just dumped on the side of the road. This is people's neighborhoods that they're dumping this stuff in. And I can assure you, I'm going to get with Mr. Van back there and Josh both. If we catch anybody doing that, we're going to prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. There's absolutely no sense in doing that, period. That's my sermon on that.
I appreciate that part, yeah.
And another piece of this, and you mentioned some things going on not in the right of way, and I'm curious as to where things stand now with any kind of progress on what has been kicked around for the entire time I've been on council, which is at least 10 years and before that, and that's the getting some kind of minimum housing ordinance in place and being able to utilize that
I took it to planning board, and planning board chose to take no action on it.
My understanding was that was your recommendation because there were some other
There was another organization that's still working on it.
organization working on that. Is there, what's the status of that?
From my gathering, from talking with people, it's extremely difficult to make one of those work. And there are some municipalities that have tried it. By and large, when they end up in court, they lose. Private property. So it's tough. They do have them. I mean,
What was the entity that was working on that here in Brunswick County?
it was a Christian organization within the county. I don't have the name right off the top of my head, but I do have it in my office.
I was under the impression it was something that was going on at the county government
They were
level.
working with the county government. What I did at the time was they asked if we would slow down because they wanted to do a countywide type of thing. And they asked that I provide them the minimum housing books that we purchased from the School of Government, which I did. I provided them with a PDF. And they've not gotten back to me on how they want to move forward on it.
How's the county addressing that issue?
I'd have to talk to Helen Bunch, see how she does it, or I'd have to talk with Penny Tysinger.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, please? Okay.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. And last but not least, I'm going to ask Mr. John Mache to address the mowing contract and the amount of money it's spent. I think the question was contract for mowing and the amount paid to date. And I'm going to ask you.
Thank you. One related item to the dumping on the right-of-ways, I wanted to mention next month is my plan to bring to the council for review and hopefully approval. I'm not sure if this would help that at all, but you know, for years and years we provided a brown and white goods pickup program monthly, and then we went to a twice-a-year program. And I've been working with Mr. Foster to coordinate a convenience site at our airport road facility that would be open a half day a week and manned, so that there would be more opportunity for town residents to have places to take these items to, and then we can manage them properly and recycle and things of that nature and take them to the landfill. So hopefully that would be a benefit and reduce the amount of dumping we see on the island. But back to the mowing contract. The mowing contract started in May 1st of this year, and in fiscal year 13, May and June, a total of $21,941 was expended for that two-month period. So far in this fiscal year, we've paid one invoice for $11,674 and change. So that's where we stand in terms of expenditures.
So we spent, the percentage would be 0.08%.
Well, as of
I'm talking about for this fiscal year.
This fiscal year would be 1/12, which would be what, 8?
0.0, I think it's 0.0, yeah, 8%.
8%.
Yeah.
Right. Approximately. So it's an equal payment every month for this fiscal year.
Even if there's more work done in a particular month, correct?
Correct.
So in terms of more work done, and then you assume that there's other coming months where work won't be done, so that I get spread out, and at the end of the contract,
Right. The contract has a frequency built into it for the different areas, right-of-way buildings, and it's a standard payment every month, but we're monitoring the contract to ensure that we get the full number of frequencies throughout the year.
well, and there's a number of frequencies, and then if there's more than the number of frequencies of the contract, there will be more payment at some point, correct?
Well,
Or are we within the frequencies that the contract calls for?
We're within and we'll stay within, even if we have to cut it ourselves. So we can't exceed whatever's encumbered or whatever the contract calls for.
Okay. I was thinking there was some kind of provision for that. There's ceiling, yeah, but there's some kind of provision for being able to exceed that or not?
No,
Okay.
Now, one thing that we are doing, Councilor Royal, is that their equipment's not as, how do you say, as precise as we'd like for it to be for ditches and getting the ditches clipped out. We're talking about these deep ditches where they have the high growth, the reeds that come out of it. So what we decided we did, we met with them, what was it, 2 weeks ago? We're trading out frequencies for the town to use a boom blower that we have just to clean those out, and we're trading that out for more frequency on normal mowing across the town, which we feel like would be an efficient way of handling it a lot better than what we're doing right now. They were using a reaper, a sickle bar type mower, and we didn't particularly care for that, so we worked out an arrangement with them for trade-off on that part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. And I think that,
More items on the next page there.
I think Councilor Wyckoff had asked that Bonnie do is that what you're up here? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought that's what you're.
There's a couple more before we get to that one. On the next item on the agenda under the manager's report was about a report on the tax collector's procedures for releases ordered by the Property Tax Commission and also the prior authorized action that council had made. This is basically two things that we just wanted to make council aware of. The first one is that the North Carolina Property Tax Commission is considered to have the same authority as an administrative court ruling when it comes to refunds of taxes that are owed. And so their decisions are binding upon the town for us to make a refund in cases where someone's tax has been deemed to be a different amount. And they notify us, and it's very important that we make those refunds timely, because when we have to make the refund, we have to make it with an interest rate prescribed by the state, which happens to be about 5% right now, which is a lot more than what we're gaining on our assets that we're holding. With that case, what we're trying to notify council of is that the staff would like to process these refunds without bringing them to council first, but since it's an administrative ruling that requires us to do it, process the refunds and then notify council at the coming meeting thereafter of those releases that have been made. What we found is through some of the staff transitions in time is that there can be delay in getting that information together to bring to council, and we didn't want to delay those refunds that are required to be processed. So that's just kind of a procedural making council aware unless there's a problem from council that we take action in that way. Additionally, the other information that we wanted to make council aware of is that back in 1993, we found a resolution from 93 where the town of Long Beach had passed action under authority that was granted in the state statutes to be able to allow the finance officer, myself in the case now, to determine the validity of request and release refunds that were under $100 for tax payments. While the resolution had been on the books for a long time, this is not something that's been happening in recent days, and so we would like to request that even though it hadn't been recently acted upon, we would like to start acting upon that and being able to therefore allow me to authorize when necessary the release of taxes that are under $100. And what this comes into is if someone made a payment and the timing of it may be different and there's interest involved, and the interest shouldn't have been properly applied in that way, and we need to come to council to have that release, those small amounts can come into play. Or if there's less than $1 tax refund and it's not worthwhile to send a bill for that amount, it allows us to have the authority to do that at the staff level and then notify council at the next meeting after any of the action in that way is taken. Basically, I'm just informing you that this was something that council had passed action in the past to do, but we weren't actively doing. We do intend to start doing now unless council directs us otherwise. Makes sense?
Yep. Carry on. Thank you.
And then finally, the other item that I had, the town manager had asked me to
that's what I was
provide a financial report. Like Kyle's going to get the screen down for us. At the Capital Improvement Committee, I provided some information of where the fiscal year 13 financials were starting and preliminary information to come out. And since that was information that they felt would be beneficial for others to hear as well, that they asked me to provide a repeat of that information. So, and what's up there is kind of hard to see. I hope everybody can see it. But basically what we began doing was looking at the budget planning process for the coming fiscal year ahead. And in so doing, we had a calendar prepared by the town manager and the Capital Improvements Committee as to what timeline we would follow for going forward in this fiscal year to be able to provide our capital improvement requests and our funding needs. With that, it started with a joint council and capital improvement committee meeting on August 8th, and at that point, I was asked to give a report on the available funding for potential capital improvement projects, or CIP. So going from that calendar forward, you'll see on the screen that there's basically each month activities that are intended to help prepare us for the budget process for fiscal year 15. I'm just going to scroll ahead and basically show that as we go through the workshops that we're working all year to prepare for that. It's not something we actually start in April or May, but the town staff as well as the committee members and such will be working on those items. So with that in mind, I'm going to kind of jump ahead to the point of the presentation for the financials. What I had done was taken the revenues and expenditures from a cash standpoint as they were booked at the end of fiscal year 2012, and then look at them in the same manner as they are from 2013 fiscal year. And our fiscal year is July 1 through June 30th. And so looking at the fiscal year that ended in June of 2012, I basically just listed the different funds, and as you can see up there, the revenues actual and budgeted, and the expenditures, and came up with the net position of each one of those funds. Now, what this does is the net position affects the fund balance at the end of the year in a positive or a negative way. And I tried to make notes where things looked really one way or the other so that you could see what was going on there. But just to scroll through, in 2012, the general fund net position was at a negative $1.4 million. But in the notes, you'll notice that 1.48 was the planned paving project, so that's why that looks so far negative. But additionally, there's also the wastewater fund was at a negative $32,000, the solid waste fund negative $71,000, and the 911 communications fund was at a negative $42,000. But the reasons, again, for the solid waste and the 911 were planned because fund balance was planned in the budget for the solid waste fund as well. The 911 center, often called the PSAP, was closed in the fiscal year, and so it was planned to spend down some of the existing fund balance. Now, in looking at the overall townwide change in this is exclusive of the capital projects. This is simply the operating side of things. At that point, we saw a decrease in the overall fund balance of $711,302. Now, again, this is looking at it from a straight revenue and expenditure perspective and not including any depreciation or items that show up in the audited financials in that way, but these are the numbers from the audit, aside from those items that are GAAP necessary. When we go forward in 2013 and we take a look at the picture in the same manner, we see that the good news, for once, instead of me giving bad news, the good news is that the numbers are looking better in that picture. The general fund numbers, the net position after some transfers that are planned in the budget to help cover the different divisions. We generally transfer money from the general fund into the fire fund. I have that listed at $1.2 million there, which is less than the planned transfer. And the net position for the general fund is a positive $766,000 in that point. Of that, about $300,000 is from Powell Bill restricted street monies, but that still leaves roughly $466 coming out at the end as a positive in the general fund prior to applying depreciation or other items that GAAP requires us to apply for audit purposes. Other non-cash items such as that. We also had a positive in the water and wastewater funds, and this shows where it includes budgeted transfer from the water to the wastewater to be able to provide the revenues that were necessary there. It also included transferring the sewer district fees over into the wastewater fund, as that's what's planned and required for those purposes, that we use those for the debt on the wastewater system. It shows that we had positive numbers as well in all the way down the board. There's no red on this screen, and that was kind of very exciting for me. I'm not sure that it will be as exciting for you as it was for me, but these are preliminary numbers, and I'm hoping that the final ones will come in just as beautiful. So here's what all those financial results that I just showed up there basically say. Generally speaking, the governmental financial picture is more positive for fiscal year 13 than it was for fiscal year 12. Now, it's still too early for final results because we book revenues and expenditures back for 60 days following the year, so we're still not finished booking those final numbers. But it appears that the reduction of the transfers from the accommodation tax to the general fund is making a big impact on the net accommodations tax revenues, because the preliminary results of that show that we're likely going to be able to increase the fund balance of the accommodations tax by $813,000 for fiscal year 13, and that's roughly more than 85% over the prior year's $434,000. So that's a big difference in the reliance that was previously happening from the general fund on the accommodations tax dollars. Additionally, the town's general fund's showing improvement. I mentioned that of the 766, approximately 300 was from POW bill, so that's restricted for streets, but the remaining 466 would increase the unrestricted general fund balances. Additionally, we have a preliminary net position in the enterprise system at roughly positive $1.45 million. This is necessary because of the prior deficiencies that we had each year in the revenues for the system, and because of the planned use of the sewer assessment monies for this, we need to work to change that direction because we were using it at a more rapid rate than than the town had originally anticipated. Additionally, while the number that I presented is not in conformity to GAAP, I'm just kind of clarifying here that depreciation is not included, but the cash position is in much better shape than it was at the end of the prior year. I see this as an important step toward moving the town to a place where the system revenues can recover from the operating losses that we had in the years past for all the many reasons that the consultants had named out before. The solid waste fund showed improvement with a net revenue of $78,000 after multiple years of having to draw funds from fund balance, so that's a good thing as well. And so I see the town's overall financial position for the general governmental activities improving for fiscal year 13 over 12. I quantify all that in numbers and give them to you, but then I'll qualify it here at the end and say, as a cautionary note, it would be in the town's best interest to continue to monitor the revenues and expenditures to ensure that the pattern continues in the fiscal year 13 audited numbers as well as in the fiscal year 14 performance. Because sometimes reductions in expenditures aren't always reoccurring, and the expenses from things such as deferred maintenance can cause something to shoot back up in a later year after it's come down. One of the things I wanted to point out with these numbers is that this is the year-over-year performance of just straight the revenues minus expenditures. In a for-profit business, people would often look at this as the net profit or net loss, but in governmental funds it's looked at differently, and it adjusts the fund balances at the end of the year. Now, one of the actions that we took as council approved through the budget process for this year is the ability to do an interfund loan to allow the general fund and the accommodations tax funds to loan money to the wastewater fund where it needed it. So it's important that these numbers come in positive because we're going to need those funds to rely on the fact that we've allowed ourselves to use it in other ways. But good news for once that I actually get to present as the financial information.
And I'd like to, as I did in the Capital Improvement Committee meeting, I want to make sure that I get to state that Bonnie came to us in January of 2012, and in February 2012, she pretty much came to me and said, oopsie. She realized immediately that we were on the edge of being in real trouble if we didn't monitor these situations. And then this year in May, she came to the town manager and I and informed us that per her calculations, between May of 2013 and June of 2014, we had a total of a little over $17 million in debt that we had to pay for. And she was finding a deficit in the available funds to service that debt. If it hadn't been for her proactive nature, we would be in a lot of trouble right now with that, just through not knowing what she identified to us. Thank you. Most information we've had since I've been paying attention to this stuff.
Madam Mayor?
Please.
Question. In looking at the additions or subtractions from fund balance from year to year, and I understand the factoring out the Powell bill, sometimes there are other expenditures that were budgeted for that didn't happen that carry over into the next year. How are we sitting in terms of those kind of dollars?
Well, in tonight's council packet, of course,
There
there were
was
some
at
budget
least
amendments.
yeah.
several of them. One of the things that we have to do each year is that we have to roll into the next fiscal year the items that are restricted funds. Some of those can be, if they're set aside for a specific purpose, like the dog park or like federal drug seizure monies. So those items through the budget amendments that were passed in the consent agenda tonight, we've rolled those into the budget for this year. So some of those are making an effect on the cash, obviously the fund balance and picture. We still sit in a much better light at the end of 13 than we did in 12. And I've done some preliminary numbers for July of 14, trying to look at how we're starting, July of 13, but fiscal year 14, I guess I should clarify, seeing how we're sitting. And we're coming in a much better position than we came out of the last fiscal year.
Well,
I can quantify that for you if you want me to pull those numbers.
No,
and send them to you.
but we found ourselves in the middle of last fiscal year, or a little bit past the middle, actually, in realizing that we were not going to be able to transfer monies from large sums of monies from certain funds to support general fund.
That's right. That's true. There were a number of items that were transferring over to support the general fund.
And
now
that's
we're not.
no longer occurring.
That's correct. That is correct.
But we've made a lot of cuts as well.
And those show up in that the fact that the accommodations tax money is being able to be put in fund balance instead of being transferred in to support those items in the general fund.
Well, of course, while I guess accommodation tax is about a third of that, but
And
the
wastewater
and water were far more than
Right.
accommodations tax. Yeah.
That's true.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
I've got a couple other things on my report here, too. We have just recently gotten two new, well, I shouldn't say new, but replacements for our customer service operation. They're going to need to have some training, and the only way we've been able to determine how we're going to be able to do that is have a full day of training for this new staff going over procedures, and that's going to be August the 26th, Monday. And the front desk will be answering calls and answering questions, but we feel like we need to close down for at least one day to really train these folks and what they need to be doing. So that pretty much covers that, doesn't it, Bonnie? Okay.
Can we, please, I'm sorry, can we make sure that we get that on the website, on Channel 8? If we, even to the point of advertising in the newspaper, that our billing department, our collections
Bonnie's
department-
taking care of putting signs up and going ahead and trying to do that, so.
Can you get the word out as?
Because that's this coming Monday that we're looking at. I'm not sure the timeline with the newspaper, but we'll certainly check for you on that with
Yep,
Lee.
okay.
And we also are putting signs up on the doors downstairs tomorrow morning.
I'll put it up on my Facebook in the morning.
One last thing, and I added this on after Richard's Bunce's little comments on it, but the cable franchise is running out next month with Time Warner Cable, but that really doesn't mean a whole lot because now any cable, any type of cable utility can come into anywhere if it's economically feasible and set up shop. So really, and all they would have to do is now, as it stands, is after 2007, they can come in, any utility, or I should say cable TV franchise, can come in to set up shop. Problem is that economically it's just not feasible for the others to do it, at this point. So while it's running out, it really doesn't mean a whole lot to the town at this point.
I think AT&C has been laying some lines, and I believe it was Joe Stanton that has been encouraging them to come in and
I've been in discussions
run
with
their
Atlantic
service.
Telephone, and they said that unless conditions change right now, they couldn't economically come in and compete. So,
Any further questions for the manager on his report, please? Next, the attorney, please, Mr. Eads.
I have some reports to make in closed session, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break. We've been in session an hour and 20 minutes.
hey, we can set up a printing press in the basement. Solve all the problems.
Okay, we will, if everybody's ready, we will call the meeting back to order. Next on the agenda is our old business portion. Old business item number 1, discussion of paying down the general fund debt. Counselor Weinkoff?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor. When we had our budget session, we decided not to take the 2.5-cent tax reduction. Instead, we decided we'd use that money on the recommendation of our finance director and pay one of our debts off. And I would like to make that motion that we start that process and let our finance director tell us maybe how we'd like to do that.
Was that in the form of a motion?
Not yet.
Okay.
As a follow-up to Councilor Weinkoff's request, we actually have been looking into what the best options may be for the town with regard to that. The reserve for fund balance per the fiscal year 14 budget is right at $435,927. With that amount, what we have considered, the original, I think, intent that Councilor Kaiser had mentioned was the idea of paying off the fire truck and 2 ambulances that are financed through BB&T. Excuse me. So what we did was we contacted BB&T to talk with them about what options we may have with early payment, not just looking at that one particular note, but taking a look at our full package of notes with the town. In so doing, they are going to provide to us their recommendations on what may be the best of our package that they could do restructuring on. One of the things that I think the most fiscally sound way to look at this would be not just simply picking one of them and paying that one off, but taking a look at that whole package and identifying if we're able to restructure some of the existing general fund debt. And I've mentioned this before, but we're actively looking at this point, to be able to see which ones would generate the most savings if we were able to restructure. There are basically 2 options for the debt restructuring or refinancing. The restructuring would be working with the existing lender to ask them to lower the interest rates closer to a market rate on those notes. Refinancing would be putting back out for other lenders as well the opportunity to refinance those debts. And we could look at each of those items. I did take a look at the documents that we had for the specific fire truck and ambulance. It's financed at a rate of 2.32%, which is one of our most attractive financing rates in our package. The total principal and interest that's outstanding at this point is $198,316. There's a principal payment that's due in fiscal year 14, which is on October the 13th that payment's due, of $62,348, with additional interest due this year of $3,758. After that payment's made, that'll leave us with a principal due of $128,404 on that note. So the potential interest savings of our paying off that particular note early, excuse me, would be $3,807 less any prepayment penalties. Now, in the documents that I began to look at, it was bid with a 1% prepayment penalty. In the actual loan documents, however, as I began to look at them, it appeared that I didn't see it in there. It looked as if maybe at that point you could prepay it early if you paid it at a loan anniversary date when you're making a payment. So that's one of the things I've contacted BB&T and intend to have conversations further with them about, is what the exact terms are, where some of the documents from the bid differed with the final loan package. And the loan package is about that thick, so short of going through every single page yet, I'm going to work with them on that. So the estimated potential savings on that note particularly could be about $2,500, but it's not a great amount of savings overall in the big picture. There are various schools of thought and different reasoning for wanting to pay off different notes. I do think that if the council wanted to take action to pay off higher interest rate debt, certainly a wise financial move to do that when the cash is readily available to do that. Now, there are also times when it's better to hold cash on hand if you feel you may need those funds for other purposes. I do think in looking at this, the fact that we did have money held in reserve for fund balance, that it would be wise to look at an overall restructure package of the town's debts and potentially even a refinance deal where we go out to other lenders. I've had some initial conversations with another lender, Baum, actually David Adams is the lender there, and he basically said that if the town wanted to do an official RFP that they could look closer, but he's also provided some preliminary information about potential refunding or restructurings. One of the things that held us back in doing this before now was that we had to have a current audit to be able to provide to a potential lender. So we were in the position of needing that, and now we're finally at that place and in that season again. We can look at many different things, but at this point, we're not ready to give a recommendation on which one would be the action to take, but we are working on that process to identify which ones are the best way to go about it. To come back to how we determine which one would be the best one from a fiscally sound perspective, what we would look at doing is figuring out which of the loans in our package can be restructured or refinanced. In other words, when the LGC considers whether or not that you can issue new debt or whether to allow you to refinance or restructure debt, they're generally looking for about a 3% differential in the amount of money that you're going to save. So your rates have to be low enough to get you that differential for them to consider it to be of advantage to you. Sometimes the amount of years that are still left in the loan can play into that because you pay more interest up front, mostly in your loans, based on the fact that they're amortized over that period. So what we would look at is which things can we restructure and save on the interest that way, and then after anything's been restructured, what then has the highest interest rate? And those would be ones that I would recommend refinancing. Additionally, you would want to consider what assets are we using or not using and what's financed, and where are we going with the plan for the assets that we have financed or those that we would then need to purchase in the future. So those pieces can come into play where they may not be straight dollar decisions. They're driven by what the intent is for that asset, whether it's a long-term use or whether we've established that it may or may not be usable as a part of our services as we are. So we will be coming back to you with additional information, and we are continuing to work. We have been playing back and forth with dates with BB&T to work with having their team come and meet with us, and I believe this afternoon we finally got a date on the calendar so that we'll be able to do that in the beginning of September and come back to council with that information.
Good. So you'll advise us if and when you need a motion for a request for RFPs for the restructurings? Exactly. And if it is deemed that when we meet with BB&T that the fire truck and ambulance is one that we need to go ahead and pay off, we need to do that in October because that is the time frame which that rolls around. So that allows us the September meeting to be able to provide you with that information and allow you to provide us with your guidance if that's what you choose to do.
As far as an RFP for restructuring for the banks, I think we can do that we can certainly do that without the board's approval to do that.
Okay.
In the past, they've used resolutions to approve it, but with their consent, I would think it would be fine to get the information and provide to council. Consent?
And I do have one question for Councilor Kaiser. I think one of the reasons we were looking at trying to pay the fire truck off and ambulances off is, one, the fire truck is not usable, and it needs to really try to go, I guess, to scrap or to sell. And with a loan still on it, we can't do that, right?
That's my understanding, as long as
I think
there's a
that was
loan,
one of the
we can't
reasons
get the time.
we were wanting to go ahead and get that paid off so we could actually move on that and try to do something with that.
And isn't the fire truck in the same note as the ambulances?
Ambulances,
So
yes.
we can't separate out the three?
That is
We have to pay them all.
We got to pay off the note before we could dispose of any of them.
It's not but 2 months till that window. We can wait 2 months. It's not gonna make that much difference. I mean, the truck's probably gonna rust and
Right.
fall apart in 2 months.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consideration of fire department issues. And Councilor Royal, I had asked Councilor Kaiser and Councilor Medlin if they had anything on the agenda that was not time intensive, that we could defer to the September meeting since we're running up on a late time here. Would you be willing to continue this to the September meeting? Very long meeting.
I'd like to.
Or any of the.
We've got two pieces of that. The A is the offering paramedic service, and the B is the scoping document. I think probably the offering the paramedic service may be more time intensive, and I believe that Councilor Kaiser has prepared some information for us in that regard, and I'd like to go ahead and
Okay, and you'd be willing to.
I'm willing to defer the
item B.
Item B until the September meeting. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you don't mind, just go ahead and do that in September. And Councilor Kaiser, you have some information.
well, this is not just information, it's my opinion. I've been in the fire and paramedic service for a good many years, and I talked to Councilor Medlin, and he asked me to put my thoughts down, so I wrote them down so I wouldn't ramble. So I'll read this. It'll take me about 3 minutes. And Lisa, I'll give you this so you don't have to write it down. First, I'd like to clarify a misconception about emergency medical response by Oak Island Fire and Rescue. Some ask why the fire department provides any type of emergency medical response because it is a duplication of services of what Brunswick County EMS provides. That's not completely true. In North Carolina, counties are tasked with providing emergency medical services, which by definition is to provide care and transport for the sick and injured. Each county can provide that service themselves or contract with another agency to do so, but it is ultimately each county's responsibility to see that somebody provides that service. To further enhance the care of the sick and injured, individual departments and municipalities provide medical first response within their response areas or corporate limits. Why do we need to provide medical first response if the county provides paramedic level emergency services? There are several reasons for this. Number one, during the day, there are only 9 Brunswick County EMS ambulances assigned throughout the county, but at night there are only 6. There are 25 fire departments and rescue squads located throughout the county. Some of the fire departments have multiple stations. The fire departments are spread out over the county, thus lowering the amount of time needed for medical aid to arrive on the scene of an emergency. Number two, when an ambulance transports to the hospital, that unit is out of service until the transport is completed. The county will shift the remaining ambulances to areas to provide coverage, but oftentimes that will increase response times, depending where the incident occurs. First responders will arrive on the scene to stabilize the patient until an ambulance then arrives. Where the duplication of services that people talk about comes in is when a fire department also provides ambulance transports. Oak Island operates 2 ambulances. Depending on current call volume and the level of care dictated by patient condition, a decision is made on each call as to whether Brunswick County EMS or Oak Island Fire will transport. But there's one important thing to remember. If Oak Island transports, 2 of the 6 on-duty firefighters, and that's 1/3 of the on-duty staff, are unavailable for immediate fire response. For this reason, Oak Island Fire should not be involved in the transport of any patients. Now I will address the issue of whether or not Oak Island Fire should provide paramedic level first response. Only 20% of the medical calls in Brunswick County ultimately require paramedic level intervention. This means that 80% of the responders require basic or intermediate level skills. All EMS agencies have benchmarks to determine how well they do in responding to emergencies. Brunswick County's benchmark is to arrive on the scene at 90% of all emergency calls in 8 minutes and 40 seconds. For the first several minutes of emergency medical call, basic level procedures are performed. They are most likely completed by first responders who have arrived on the scene prior to a county ambulance. While I believe that Oak Island Fire and Rescue providing paramedic level first response will not have an overall profound impact on the level of care given, I do believe that there are specific criteria of calls in which the patient will benefit from early paramedic level intervention. Those calls will be the ones that occur at periods of peak call volume when response times of the Brunswick County paramedic units are longer than usual, as well as for patients who are suffering acute cardiac events and trauma that requires immediate pain relief, such as a pelvis or a femur fracture. A good majority of the public will never face the opportunity of requiring paramedic level in the field, but for those that do, then we have to make the critical decision of whether we want to provide the higher level of first response service or provide a lesser level of care that will cover the 80% of the basic level calls. I can tell you, and this is my opinion too, I can tell you that with great certainty that if you are, or even ever have been in that 20% that needs a rapid paramedic level intervention, then you will lean toward that option. Those are my concerns. Now, I haven't got this wrote down, but I am in favor of us proceeding with our fire department providing paramedic level first response, and I would like to I may make that in the motion tonight. I don't know if you want to entertain that or not.
I understand paramedic first response, but not transport.
Not transports.
Okay, if we...
So before I make the motion, I'll hear to everybody else's.
Why don't you go ahead and make a motion, we'll get it seconded, and then we can go to discussion.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that we direct staff to proceed with negotiating with the county for us to elevate our level of first response to the paramedic level. I would like us to have our work completed where we could go to that level January 1st, depending on what the county says. It's ultimately up to the county and the medical director, but I would like to emphasize that we've drug this out long enough, and I'm ready to make a move on it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Well, now
I'll let
that's a
her-
first that
I'll
you
let
two
her-
have agreed on anything in unison there. I like that.
We're going to
Yeah,
let
say
Council
that.
Royal second that motion since she introduced the item. Okay, because that was a camera finish. Okay, any further discussion from any council member? Please?
Yeah, I would like to make some comments, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Please.
And if you'd rather go first, or I don't want to take your place. I think there are a couple of issues here. By the way, I agree with what the motion says. I guess you can tell that by me seconding the motion. But there's another issue here that I think we need to be aware of. And I had in my mind that we would go to paramedic first responders with no transport. And after talking with our fire chief today, I still believe that's the way for us to go, but with one exception. And his idea is that we need to keep one of the ambulances for crucial, extreme situations where a patient really needs to go quick, or in the case of a mass emergency where we have a storm and there's a lot of people injured and where we need to aid with transport for the county. We do receive funds from the county for providing an ambulance service for the island. And if we dispose of both ambulances, we lose that funding. If we keep the ambulance on the island, the indications are right now, as well as we can determine, is that we would keep the funding, that we would still receive funding from the county. And out of his and my conversation today, I said to him to describe extreme circumstances.
Well, extreme circumstances would be several. First of all, hurricane evacuations. We've got people on the island that need to be transported off. They're not ambulatory. We can have large events that go on that we normally have, like Dixie Youth programs and all that stuff where they ask for some kind of ambulance response, and generally we do that with additional staff. We don't take away from our staff to provide that service for the community. Also, mass casualty incidents. We've had a number of vehicles that have had multiple patients. And then also, we have those instances where Brunswick County is busy to the degree where they're calling New Hanover County ambulance to come in and to the north end, or Horry County to come into the south end because they're running low on their resources. And in those situations, we would be able to utilize that ambulance as a paramedic level transport if Brunswick County was too far away.
Okay, and that's one thing I wanted you to clarify. Although our ambulance would not be a paramedic certified ambulance and in the paramedic system with the county, if you took a patient in that ambulance and had your paramedic equipment with you,
all we would have to do is take our monitor, our cardiac monitor, and our drug module, all of our paramedic drugs.
then it would become
It would become a paramedic level unit to transport for that
particular
specific transport.
Okay.
It would not remain a paramedic level unit. When we're clear from the hospital, we're clear, and we come back. And then we put our stuff back on the engine and go about our day as normal business. That would be the exception, not the rule. So we don't have to spend the funds either to have that ambulance permanently stocked with medications and so on and so forth. We could just keep it at a basic level and utilize it when it was necessary for us to utilize, and no more than that.
Well, there's another advantage to that too, in that if you did have to do that, then that ambulance would be head back to Oak Island once you were through with the call?
Well, when the CAD system is set up with that ambulance, it is set up as a basic ambulance.
Right.
So if we were on our way back from, even if we had to transport to New Hanover or Brunswick or wherever we needed to go, when we were clear from that, we would not be dispatched as the closest unit between wherever where we are on our way back to the island, because the CAD system doesn't recognize that unit as a paramedic level
That's a
unit.
valuable point in what we're talking about.
Can I ask a couple of questions? Chief, while you're up there, we talked about the training before. We're gonna have the training we need to do it by January 1?
Well, the training part of it, we would not be able to. I mean, we have 11 paramedics total on staff right now, myself and Steve, and then 9 others who are the shift workers. We would need to put at least 3 people out of the rest of the staff through paramedic school. That's 1,200 hours. It takes about a year. It typically starts around January and typically ends around December. So the cost of sending those 3 people would affect 2 budget years. It wouldn't all be consumed in the 1 budget year. So that's a plus. But they would not be ready to perform as paramedics until the following year. They would have to, but we would have enough to get, we have part-timers, and then of course we have me and Steve. So we have enough to get started, but we would want to put 3 more people through that school to get 12 shift people, so we have 2 per shift in each station.
One other question too. One of the things I think Councilor Kaiser mentioned before, maybe you, I can't remember which, is retaining these folks because of the amount of calls that we have. Wasn't there something that came up about that it was hard to retain them unless they got a certain number, and then their ability to be able to perform? I'm just trying to get a clarification on that.
Well, I'm not understand. I'm sorry. I'll need you to repeat it so I understand fully.
You remember having that conversation?
Yes, we've talked about some of the young people that come out of paramedic school, 21, 22. They want to run a massive amount of calls, whereas somebody like you and I don't want to ever run a paramedic call again. And there's a retention problem. You seem to get to an age where, you know, it hit me when I was about 35. I didn't want to run any more calls.
There is, and you're right. Those young guys, they want to run calls all day long. But the retention problem that we have right now is that we advertise for paramedics, and then when they come and interview, we tell them we don't run at a paramedic level. So after 6 months to 9 months or whatever, they start one. I came here because you were advertising for a paramedic, but we're not able to practice those skills. I think our retention would be better if we're functioning at the paramedic level, because the bottom line is that all paramedics know that 20% of the calls that they respond to are going to need paramedic level intervention. The other 80%, as you said, are, but they're not even getting the chance for that 20% working with us. I think our retention rate would be better if we were running a paramedic level.
Now, I'd like to clarify one thing. When I talked to you this afternoon, you said that Brian Watts said that our funding would stay basically the same if we do not transport, because we're considered a medical provider.
What I clarified with Brian Watts was that, because I have checked with several other fire departments, Sunset Beach, Ocean Isle, Shallotte, Sunset Harbor, not every fire department responds to medical calls, but that group does. They respond as a basic EMTs in fire trucks, and they receive no funding whatsoever. But that's because they fall under the umbrella of the fire marshal and the fire department system in the county. We do not. We fall under the EMS system in the county because we've always been involved in EMS. So with that said, Brian did clarify that we would not lose funding. Now, he didn't say that we would maintain $36,000 a year is what we receive as funding from Brunswick County EMS or from the county.
Based on a formula.
Leland responds at a paramedic level, and they receive $38,500, but they provide transports. We're not looking to provide transports. But the way, he could not, he was on the road actually and called me and returned my message, so he said that he couldn't clarify that we would definitely get 36, but we would definitely get funding. I can't tell you if it's going to be $36,000 still or not. That's what we receive now, $9,000 a quarter. So I'm not going to second guess that. I'd have to speak with him in the process.
And the motion is to start that process so that we get all these things ironed out, right?
Counselor, can I ask, Mayor, can I ask him?
Please.
Counselor Kaiser, I think one of the things that we were talking about too, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was,
You're talking about possibly having to send current staff members. That's what it was.
Into the interlands, but I think that's only with the transport. Is that correct?
Well, no, that was to run paramedic level. What happened, but that did change. Several things have changed since I initially put this together in May. One of the things that changed is that we've hired more paramedics. So therefore, the cost of sending paramedics to school has decreased significantly because we don't have to send as many now because we've hired a few on. Secondly, when I put that proposal together, myself and Jack Baker, Captain Jack Baker, were the only two that were actually functioning in this county as paramedics with Brunswick County, myself and him. So all of the others would have had to go and be precepted, and it would have cost, it wasn't very much, it was several $1,000s a piece because they all had to do about 48 to 60 hours of ride time. But since from between May and now, 3 others on our staff have been hired on with either Brunswick County or Bald Head. So that's 3 more people. They're already cleared to function, so that's 3 more people that I don't have to send to do that. They're already cleared to function now. So several things have changed in our favor, have changed from May till now.
You got 6 now, right? That are cleared to function.
We have 6 now. Before we had 9.
3 that aren't.
Right.
Okay.
So, now, was there something you wanted to add, Steve? So,
Yeah, I just, January 1st is only, 3 months away? That's a pretty...
4 months, 4 and a half.
It's I'm not saying it's not doable, but it would be better to make sure we have all our ducks in a row and let it go a little past January 1st, because there are a lot of things that need to be done, and some of them are outside of our control.
most of them are outside of our control. We're going to be under the time frame of Brunswick County, and they have, first of all, it has to go to their board. They have a review committee. It's got to go to the county commissioners. And of course, you know, and I know that they meet, you know, one board meets once a month, the other board meets quarterly, which is 3 months. So we're going to be locked into their time.
That's something that's come up before, and understand when the January 1st date was placed on there, that was when we were doing budget workshops last spring.
Right.
So, you know.
And it's also, excuse me, but it's additional equipment that we have to carry, and there's not a lot of additional equipment, but now that's all got to be on the fire truck. But what's probably a little bit more difficult is that a lot of the medications that we will have to carry have to be in a controlled environment. In other words, they're not supposed to get colder than 50 degrees or warmer than, it's like 110 or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but so those are things that we have to make sure, because before this all happens, there will be an inspection by probably Brunswick County and the state.
And the state.
And they will have to see that we are able to provide that controlled environment and that we do have the appropriate equipment.
Well, would you have time between now and our meeting in September to put together a plan, a timeline?
I can, yes. I talked to Brian Watts today.
Well, why don't you do that? Why don't you put a timeline together and bring it back to us? I mean, we've already decided to do it.
We have a motion on the floor. He would have to.
You'll have to admit.
Yeah, I can get together with Brian and several of the other key players in this, because he obviously will not be the only one, but several of the key players, and we can probably hammer out a little timeline here. But you know, there's other factors. We're going to be carrying as paramedic controlled substances, Valium, morphine, fentanyl, and they have to be obviously under lock and key, and we have to have a license for that, and so there's things we have to go through, so I couldn't give you a timeline.
I'd like to say something. My motion was not that we start running calls January 1st. My motion was that you have the stuff in line at our level outside of the regulations in the county. Because I specified that we can't get in the county and stuff.
We'll have all part done.
Why don't you, Councilor Kaiser's suggestion, amend your motion to remove any stated date and time, date certain?
I don't want to move that because this is drug on for a year, and I want to have a hard target where I can see that we're going to do this.
Why
This
don't
has
you
went on.
amend your motion and have them bring us back a timeline in our September meeting, and then we'll have something to shoot for. We've set the date.
I'll do that. Yeah.
We can move as fast as you want us to move. We can't make the county move as fast as we want.
And I've specified that.
Let's make it clear for the town clerk. The motion is amended to make it effective after they bring back their timeline at the September meeting, correct?
You got that,
Councilor
Lisa?
Royal, you agree to second the amended motion?
How will the motion read now?
I'll come visit you tomorrow and hang out with you all day and make sure you
What I have
understand.
is the amendment to the motion is to direct staff to bring a timeline back to the September meeting for implementation.
I'm good with it, or you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk, Robert's rules, do we vote on the original motion or vote on the amended motion? Or both?
You know what, hold on, let me see who made this second.
You won't ask me something?
Second amendment?
Yes, I just asked
Yes,
her.
you have
She
to
did.
vote on the amended, on the
Okay.
motion to amend.
All right.
Yes.
We need to vote on the emotion, pardon?
Would it be possible to have our attorney look into this liability issue, and also I need to look at insurance? Just round everything out, just to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Well, they directed staff, so, are you staff?
I just wanted to wake Brian up over here.
Make him do something other than surf on his computer.
This motion's taken
That
longer to
we
make
have
than
a
going to
motion to
paramedic school.
amend the original motion. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Okay, and now we need to vote on the motion as amended, please. We amended to have the staff bring the information back in September on the scheduled timeframe. All those in favor, please. And it is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank the Lord.
Okay.
Longer to make the motion than it took.
We got 5 items under new business. If we take as long with these as we just did with everything else tonight, we're not going to do it on the very first one. The first one is...
Madam Mayor, before you
Please.
move on, I was the one that asked for number 5 to be put on. I'd like to defer that. It's not time sensitive at all,
Okay,
and I'd like to defer that until our September meeting.
so we'll defer that to the September meeting. Madam Clerk, if you don't mind, add it to September.
Mayor Wallace, I added number 2. That is not time sensitive. We can defer that.
Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you don't mind, add number 2 to the September meeting. Okay, number 1 is adoption of resolution awarding retired Sergeant Charlie Blaylock his badge and service firearm. Charlie was here earlier, but I think he gave up on it too.
Madam
But
Mayor.
Charlie Blaylock retired. Honors to him on his service to the town of Oak Island.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution awarding to retired Sergeant Charlie Baylock his badge and service sidearm as presented.
We have a motion. We have a second by Councilor Royal. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please. Councilor Weinkauf's already got his arm. Okay. Number 3, discussion of tents and gear on the beaches. Councilor Weinkauf,
I
please.
hope this is quick, Madam Mayor. I know we can't do nothing right now until the governor signs the bill. Also know that over the summer, we had a large number of tourists, and our beaches were packed. And I also know when you walk down the beach at nighttime, it was an absolute safety hazard out there. There was tents, canopies out there The poles were still up, ropes coming down from them. You didn't see the ropes, and my wife almost fell over one of them. But I really think it's a big safety concern. I love the little list we got here, what other towns did. And what I'd like to have, the consensus of council, is to have Josh look at our ordinance, put some teeth in our ordinance to eliminate these tents and canopy, all beach gear by sunset. And then when the time is right, when the bill gets passed, that he can bring it back to us. We can look at it, discuss it, and hopefully pass this. Also, I would like our staff, in the meantime, we have plenty of time before the next season really picks up, look at our ordinance, that if we pass it, or any ordinance we have, and tell us how we can enforce our ordinances a little bit better. I actually had an email from a lady, and I totally agree. She says, why in the world would you want to pass an ordinance if you can't enforce them? So I think we need to look and see how we can enforce this ordinance when it comes up, and maybe any other ordinance we have on our books. But that's what I'd like Josh to work on.
Consensus from council that Josh work on an ordinance to be brought back to us when is 30 days after the bill hit the governor's desk?
It was the 23rd.
I think that's what I was surfing this to find out when it was presented, and.
Oh, you were actually working?
Not surfing, I meant internet surfing. And it said July 23rd, and if they didn't, recess, it would have became law 10 days after that. I was asking Steve, I don't know what day they actually recessed. Because if they're still in session, he has a 10-day window to either sign it, veto it, or it automatically becomes law.
There's a reason that I think he's not signing it. It has something to do with the Carolina smoking on the beach deal.
Yeah.
But I don't know, that's what I was told.
I thought that even if they had recessed, that it became law 30 days after.
If their recess is 30
If they're recessed, that's
Their
the difference.
recess is
Okay.
30 days.
Goes it down to 30
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, they're going to
Okay.
enforce
Does not
that.
address the municipality's ability to regulate smoking. That, I don't want to get into the legislative history of it, but there was been.
Maybe it was you just telling me something about it.
I didn't tell you the governor wasn't going to sign it because of that. There was a push to get legislation specifically
Thing we got on the
authorizing
different
towns
beach.
to ban smoking on the beach, and that was, that received a lot of resistance, so they dropped that to get what we have now through.
Okay.
Yeah. Madam Mayor?
Okay, so we're council consensus that, at Councilor Weinkauf's suggestion, we ask Josh to work up language for a possible ordinance for council approval and bring it back to us at our September meeting.
Madam
Council
Mayor?
consensus, please. I'm not ignoring you, I just want to finish
Well,
what,
and what I
understand
want
what
to try to
Councilor
tidy
Weinkauf
up
is
so
saying.
that we don't get something to look at in September that has to be changed again. We had emailed out to us a summary of this type of ordinance language that's done up and down the coast. I believe, Steve, you had asked for Lisa to put that together. One of the things that seemed to be specific in each one, and this may be an attorney issue, but the ordinance we have now references sunset. It seems like everybody else decided pretty much to get a specific time so you don't argue about when that is. That can also be critical in doing whatever kind of enforcement procedures may be recommended. I just point that out as something that would be useful to consider.
Okay. Thank you.
And I agree with Councilor Weinkauf. We can pass all the ordinances we want, but if we haven't got a way to enforce them, it's not good.
Yep.
Well, can I ask one question?
Please.
If indeed it is law prior, and it sounds like it will be prior to Labor Day weekend, can we, if we...
Enforce what we have?
Can we see about enforcing what we have, possibly?
I could check
If we have
into
some
it.
blatant...
It's going to take some manpower to do it, but it's probably going to take a budget, manpower, whatever, but it will be just a strictly manpower issue to get it done, yeah.
Okay.
And along those lines, if that starts before we have another discussion with what Councilmember Royal said, I would make sure it was dark to dark.
That's because that's what it says.
The sunset, I mean, what is that?
Let me say this, you know, we've gone through this one time before, Mr. Crook was telling me about it, but he went through and took everything off the beach. And what happened was, he took a bunch of stuff that we ended up writing a check out for $3,000, and then started paying all these individuals back $150, $200 a piece for stuff that was taken that shouldn't have been taken. And there's the definition.
Why was it taken if it shouldn't have been taken?
Well, apparently there was a second thought. I don't know all the details. You have to ask Josh about it. But the other thing is, as far as the sand dunes, and their Council Royal knows this, is what's protected on that beach. What does this apply to? My definition applies to the toe of the dune to the mean high tide mark. Now, if you start getting up in the dune part, that gets a little tricky because that's private property and it's not.
And that was clarifying that area was an amendment that we made to the ordinance last year, and specifying the toe of the dune and how that's defined by CAMA in terms of first line of stable vegetation, so that there is a precedent for what line we're talking about and what area we're talking about, and that was very carefully drafted to accomplish that purpose.
Okay.
And that's something that we shouldn't lose in any proposals for any drafting new ordinance language, because that is very similar to what the state has used in this new legislation in defining that area. They've kept that same area too. So it's what you do within that. We need to keep the area part of it just like it is.
And if I may, I'll be happy to talk to whoever's going to enforce what we have on the books now. It's the ocean beaches of North Carolina is how they define it. It's Chapter 77-20.
Yeah, we've got
the new ordinance that's proposed to council will track that verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
Is that from toe of dune? Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to clarify a little bit of that.
Yeah. But there's and there were a lot of people that we got complaints about, and people see as being violations of where things can be that really aren't in that area. Okay.
Okay, you have your work for you again. Okay, next is discussion of requests for the use of the Beach Lovers logo. I added this to the agenda at the request of Erzan Fortin, the co-chair of the Beach Preservation Society. She received an email from Jody Howler with the Hatteras Island Ocean Center, and they're beginning to open up another program there, a volunteer program, and all of their items had "don't do this, don't do that," and they loved our Be a Beach Lover campaign. The positive message that you get and take care of the beach rather than all the negatives. They would like to ask for permission from the Oak Island Town Council to use our Be a Beach Lovers signs. I believe I saw that all they want to do is use a reproduction of our signs, and they will reproduce it in full, the ones we have at the beach. So I would like to ask, state that I'm all in favor of this. I think the more exposure we can get to it, the better. More tourists will reach. So if there is any council member that agrees to allow them to use for the time being and see how it works and maybe let something later, let them use our Be a Beach Lovers campaign logo and sign. If any council member is in favor of it. And
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion. And I think we definitely need a lot of discussion of hopefully not too much, but discussion on it. But I would make a motion that we pursuant to advice from the attorney, we see if we can enter into an agreement with this group in Hatteras for the use of the Beach Lovers logos.
My suggestion, if the council elects to go that route to allow it, that we need to have it in writing, how long they're allowed, what they're allowed to use it for, probably even a disclaimer and a hold harmless agreement type thing.
I just know in one of the, well, we actually got it from Roseanne this afternoon, so possibly we could just ask that the attorney work with Hatteras Island. I'm sorry, I just noticed at the back of this thing, and just got it too late today to read it. She suggested some specifics, and she suggested restrictions on sub-licensing and a term and a fee. So perhaps council consensus to ask Brian to develop a possible agreement and bring it back at the September meeting. How about that? Everybody okay?
Fine with me. I mean, I
Okay.
think that's where it's gotta go.
Okay. Brian, if you don't mind, work on that and bring it back in September.
Madam Mayor,
Be in writing.
Please.
let me be totally clear, I am completely opposed to this.
Well,
I
And
understand.
I will continue to be opposed to it. This logo was designed specifically for Oak Island. And if there are licensing agreements, they need to be with businesses or groups in Oak Island promoting Oak Island.
Thank
And
you.
if we're not going to do that, then we need to get rid of the service mark.
Thank you.
Well, can I just ask a question?
Please.
If it, we need to understand how this would be presented in the Hatteras area, but it appeared to me that they were going to cite the town of Oak Island in the service mark.
That doesn't change my opinion.
Okay.
Okay. Next is consideration of enacting no smoking rules in town buildings and parks. Council Medlin.
That too.
We deferred that to September. Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session
Closed session.
to discuss potential litigation pursuant to.
Is that helpful, Tim?
In-
North Carolina General Statute 143-3.
Was that helpful?
A3.
Right, it's all in
all
reference
potential.
to Sexton versus the town of Oak Island, as well as Oak Island versus LS3P et al.
You should be.
Second by Councilor Kaiser. All those in favor?
10 minutes.
Okay, we will call the meeting back to order. Council took no action in closed session. Mr. Eads, I believe you have a motion that the council needs to consider, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, a motion to direct the town attorney and the finance director to take the steps necessary to effectuate the settlement of the stormwater lawsuit as discussed in closed session, and to authorize the mayor and/or the town manager to sign the settlement agreements once they are finalized to the satisfaction of the town attorney.
Would someone like to make that motion, please?
I will.
So moved by Councilor Medlin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Kaiser. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please. And it is unanimous. Do we have anyone that wants to do council comments, please?
I do have just a brief comment, if I may, Madam Mayor, because it's something that I've been asked a lot about, particularly over the last few months, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to say what I have said to folks, but I have it on public record and have it on Channel 8 where people can hear me say it. As you know by now, I have not filed to run for re-election. When I started out down this road 10 years ago, I never intended then to serve more than 2 terms if I was blessed by the voters to do that. Of course, the 2-year appointment and filling out the remaining 2 years of Bill Smith's term sort of threw a kink in that. And in terms of timeline, last election cycle, when the seat that I now occupy was up for election, that was 2009. And I decided then, when I decided to run, that, if I got beat that year, great, something else I'm supposed to do. But if I was reelected, that it would be the last term that I would serve, that I would not run for reelection. So that has been something that's been in my mind in some ways from the beginning. And my decision has no bearing on anything other than that.
Okay,
So, for the record,
thank you.
that's from the horse's mouth, as they say. Nah.
Anyone else have, it's late, anyone else have any other comments, please? If not, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
Let us adjourn.
By Councilor Kaiser, half second, please.
Second.
By Councilor Painter, all those in favor, please. And it is unanimous.